I never planned to fall for someone in Monte Carlo. Especially not while pretending to be someone I wasn't. But there I was, sipping an overpriced cappuccino at Café de Paris, when he slid into the chair across from me with the kind of confidence that should have been my first warning sign. My name is Alara, and until that moment, I'd managed to keep my real identity hidden for nearly 2 years. Living under my mother's maiden name had given me the freedom to experience life without the weight of being Malcolm Winslow's only daughter. No trust fund vultures, no social climbers, just genuine connections. Or so I thought. I couldn't help but notice you've been sketching the casino, he said, nodding toward my notebook. I'm Grayson. Grayson Hale. I should have closed my notebook right then. Should have made an excuse and left. Instead, I found myself drawn into conversation with this stranger who looked at me like I was the most fascinating person he'd ever met. Just trying to capture the soul of the place, I replied, deliberately vague. I'm Alara Monroe. The lie rolled off my tongue with practiced ease. 2 years of introducing myself this way had made it feel almost true. An artist with an eye for architecture? His smile reached his eyes, creating small creases that somehow made him more appealing. Or perhaps something else entirely? There was an edge to his question that I couldn't quite place. I'd gotten good at reading people. You have to when you're hiding in plain sight, but Grayson Hale was different. Every instinct told me he was dangerous, not in the physical sense, but in the way that beautiful things often are. Let's just say I appreciate the history, I answered, closing my sketchbook. The stories behind the facades. Then you must join me for dinner, he said, pulling out a business card. I know quite a few stories about this place that wouldn't make it into the tourist guides. I studied his card, CEO of Hale Innovations. My father's company had actually considered acquiring them last quarter, though I wasn't supposed to know that. I don't usually have dinner with strangers, I said, even as I slipped his card into my bag. Then let's not be strangers. He stood, straightening his perfectly tailored suit. 8 o'clock at Le Louis XV? Unless you're afraid of what you might discover. The challenge in his voice was unmistakable. As he walked away, I caught a glimpse of an older woman watching us from across the terrace. Something in her expression made my skin crawl, a calculation that felt too familiar. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Be careful in Monaco. The Hales are not what they seem. I stared at the message, then at Grayson's retreating figure. My father's warnings usually came too late, and this one felt like the beginning of something I wouldn't be able to stop. The question was, did I even want to? Le Louis XV was exactly the kind of place I'd been avoiding since leaving New York. Crystal chandeliers, gold-leafed everything, and that suffocating air of old money that reminded me too much of home. Grayson had already secured the best table, of course, and the maitre d' treated him like royalty. I wondered if they knew his company was hemorrhaging money. You seem distracted, Grayson said, studying me over his wine glass. Second thoughts about dining with a stranger? I forced a smile. Just taking in the atmosphere. It's elaborate. You don't seem impressed. His eyes narrowed slightly. Most women I bring here can't stop gushing about the decor. Most women? I raised an eyebrow. Do you make a habit of recruiting dinner companions from cafes? Before he could answer, a sharp voice cut through the ambient murmur of the restaurant. Darling, what a delightful surprise. The woman I'd seen watching us earlier glided toward our table, her designer dress whispering against the carpet. Grayson's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. Mother, he said, rising. I wasn't expecting you tonight. Cordelia Hale, she announced, extending her hand to me like a queen expecting it to be kissed. And you are? Alara Monroe. I kept my handshake firm but brief. Your son and I just met today. How? Serendipitous. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. You know, you look remarkably familiar. Have we met at the Metropolitan Gala perhaps? Or was it the Warren benefit? My heart skipped. I'd attended both events, but as Alara Winslow. I'm afraid not. I don't usually move in those circles. Mother, Grayson interrupted. Shouldn't you be at the casino with the Beaumonts? Oh, they were dreadfully boring tonight. She pulled up a chair uninvited. I'd much rather get to know your new friend. Tell me, dear, what brings you to Monte Carlo? The next hour was an expertly conducted interrogation disguised as small talk. Every question seemed designed to trap me in a lie, while Grayson watched our verbal sparring with growing interest. My phone buzzed again, another text from my father. Cordelia Hale is dangerous. Get out now. Everything all right? Grayson asked as I slipped my phone away. Just work, I lied. Actually, I should probably go. Early meeting tomorrow. I'll walk you out. Grayson stood quickly, almost eager to escape his mother's presence. Outside, the Mediterranean air felt clean after the stifling atmosphere of the restaurant. Grayson caught my arm gently. I apologize for my mother. She can be intense. Is that what we're calling it? I tried to laugh it off, but his touch was sending warning signals through my body. Have dinner with me again tomorrow, he said. Somewhere less formal. No surprise appearances from overbearing mothers. I should have said no. Should have listened to my father's warning. But there was something in Grayson's eyes, a hint of desperation beneath the confidence, that made me curious. One condition, I said. No more fancy restaurants. Let's see the real Monte Carlo. His smile was genuine this time, but as I walked away, I caught sight of Cordelia watching from the restaurant window. She was already on her phone, and somehow I knew she was having me investigated. The question was, who would uncover whose secrets first? The truth hit me like a slap in the face as I stared at my laptop screen. 3 weeks of digging through financial records had finally revealed what my father had been warning me about. Hale Innovations wasn't just struggling, it was a house of cards waiting to collapse. My phone lit up with Grayson's message. Missing you. Dinner tonight. Over the past weeks, our casual dinners had evolved into something more. Something that made my chest tight every time I thought about the lies between us. Both his and mine. I called Lila, needing my friend's perspective. The company's bleeding money, I said when she answered. And guess who's been approached about a potential bailout? Let me guess, Winslow Tech? Lila's journalist instincts were sharp as ever. Girl, you need to tell him who you are before this blows up in your face. It's not that simple. I watched a yacht cruise past my hotel window. His mother's been digging into my background. She's going to figure it out soon. Or maybe she already has. Lila's voice turned serious. Check your email. Now. The subject line made my blood run cold. Cordelia Hale's secret meeting with Malcolm Winslow. The photo showed them at a private club in Monaco, looking anything but adversarial. A knock at my door made me jump. Through the peephole, I saw Grayson, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. I need to tell you something, he said as soon as I opened the door. His eyes were red-rimmed, his usual confidence cracked. I know about the company, I said quietly. He froze. How? Does it matter? I stepped aside to let him in. Were you ever going to tell me? I wanted to. He paced the room like a caged animal. But Mother said. Your mother? I laughed bitterly. The same mother who's currently meeting with Malcolm Winslow? His head snapped up. How do you know about that? Because, I took a deep breath. Malcolm Winslow is my father. The silence that followed was deafening. Grayson's face went through a series of emotions. Shock, betrayal, anger, and finally, something like understanding. You're Alara Winslow. It wasn't a question. All this time? Yes. I met his gaze steadily. Just like all this time, you've been trying to save your company by getting close to me. That's not. He stepped toward me, but I backed away. Isn't it? Was any of it real, Grayson? Before he could answer, my phone buzzed with another message from my father. Deal's done. Cordelia made her choice. What deal? Grayson demanded, reading over my shoulder. I pulled up the financial news on my laptop. The headline was already there. Winslow Tech acquires Hale Innovations in hostile takeover. Grayson's face went pale. She wouldn't. Looks like your mother made her choice too, I said softly. I guess we were both just pawns in their game. He reached for me, but this time when I stepped back, it was final. Alara, please. I think you should go, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. We both have some things to figure out. As the door closed behind him, I realized this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about breaking free from the games our parents played. And maybe, just maybe, finding something real in the wreckage. The morning after the takeover announcement, I found Cordelia waiting in my hotel lobby, perfectly poised in a Chanel suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. Let's not pretend we don't know exactly who each other is, she said, gesturing to a private corner. Shall we? I followed her, noting how the staff seemed to disappear at her mere presence. I assume this isn't a social call. You've caused quite the stir, my dear. She pulled out a folder. Though I must admit, your little charade was impressive. Living as a nobody, dating my son. Was any of it real? Was anything about your deal with my father real? I countered. Or was Grayson just collateral damage? Her smile tightened. Business is business. Surely Malcolm taught you that much before you decided to play runaway heiress. She slid the folder across the table. Inside were photos, Grayson and me at dinner, walking along the beach, sharing private moments I thought had been just ours. What do you want? I asked, my voice steady despite the churning in my stomach. Want? Oh, darling. She laughed softly. I want you to disappear. Go back to your privileged life and leave my son alone. He doesn't need another reminder of his failures. Shouldn't that be his choice? His choice. Her eyes hardened. Like it was his choice to lose his company? To fall for someone who's been lying to him since day one. My phone buzzed, Grayson calling again. I let it go to voicemail as I had with his dozen other attempts since last night. You know what's interesting? I said, pushing the folder back. You're so focused on protecting him that you never stopped to ask why I was really here. A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. To spy for your father, obviously. No. I stood up. To escape him. Just like Grayson's been trying to escape you. Her composure cracked just slightly. You don't know anything about my son. I know he's suffocating under your control. I know he had plans for the company that didn't match your vision. And I know about the trust fund you've been using to manipulate him. She went very still. How did you? I'm a Winslow, remember? Finding secrets is what we do. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and that deal you made with my father? Check the fine print. The board still needs family approval for any major restructuring. You wouldn't dare interfere, she called after me. Watch me. Outside, I finally answered Grayson's call. We need to talk, he said before I could speak. Not about us, about what my mother's really planning for the company. Meet me at the cafe where we first met, I said. And Grayson, bring the documents from your father's original will. The ones your mother doesn't know you kept. As I hung up, another text from my father appeared. You're playing a dangerous game, sweetheart. For the first time since this all began, I smiled. Because he was wrong, this wasn't a game anymore. This was about breaking free, about truth, about choosing who we wanted to be despite the chains our parents had forged. And I was done playing by their rules. The cafe felt different now. Colder. Grayson sat across from me, his father's will spread between us like a battle map, while rain pelted the windows outside. She altered the documents, he said, his voice hollow. All these years, she made me believe I was following my father's wishes for the company. I studied the original will. He wanted you to have full control at 30. No strings, no oversight. Instead, she convinced the board I wasn't ready. His laugh was bitter. Turns out the only person who's been deceiving me wasn't you after all. My phone lit up with Lila's message. Malcolm's on his way to Monaco. Cordelia's called an emergency board meeting. Before I could respond, the cafe door chimed. Cordelia walked in, followed by my father. The sight of them together made my skin crawl. Well, isn't this cozy? Cordelia's voice dripped with false warmth. A family reunion of sorts. That's enough, Cordelia. My father's commanding tone filled the space. The game's over. Game? She smiled. Malcolm, darling, we're just getting started. Show them. He pulled out a document. The board voted this morning. The merger's complete. Without my approval? I stood up. That's not possible. Your approval? Grayson looked between us. What does she mean, father? Malcolm's face remained impassive. Your mother didn't just negotiate a merger, Grayson. She sold her controlling shares. To me. The betrayal in Grayson's eyes cut deeper than I expected. You knew about this? No, I said quickly. Isuer, Oh, please. Cordelia waved her hand dismissively. You're both so naive. Did you really think your little romance wasn't part of the plan all along? What plan? Grayson demanded. To ensure a smooth transition, Malcolm said. Your mother approached me months ago, Alara. She knew who you were the moment you started seeing her son. The room spun slightly. You used me? Both of you. We protected you, my father corrected. Both of you. From yourselves. Grayson's hands clenched around his father's will. Like you protected me, mother? By hiding this. Everything I did was for you, Cordelia snapped. To keep you from running the company into the ground with your ridiculous innovations. Those innovations could have saved us. Grayson's voice cracked. If you'd just trusted me. Trust works both ways. I cut in, looking at my father. Something none of you seem to understand. I grabbed my coat, needing to escape, but Grayson caught my arm. Where are you going? Away from all of this. From them. I met his eyes. From you. Alara, wait. Let her go, Cordelia said. She served her purpose. Something in me snapped. I turned back, facing them all. You know what? You deserve each other. The manipulative mother, the controlling father, the son who can't break free. Keep your companies, your schemes, your perfect little power plays. I headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and father? Check your email. I just sent the board some very interesting documents about how this merger really came together. I'm sure the SEC will find them fascinating too. The look of shock on their faces almost made the past months worth it. Almost. Outside in the rain, my phone buzzed again. Lila, did you do it? Yes, I typed back. Time for Plan B. The Monte Carlo Casino's annual gala was in full swing when I walked in, wearing my real name like armor. Lila's exposé had hit the press an hour ago, and the whispers followed me across the marble floor. The Winslow heiress returned from exile. The woman who brought down 2 dynasties with a single email. You have some nerve showing up here, Cordelia hissed, intercepting me near the champagne tower. Do you have any idea what you've done? Actually, I do. I took a glass, noting how her perfectly manicured hands trembled. The SEC has frozen all merger activities pending investigation. Your board members are scrambling to save themselves. And my father. I smiled. Well, he's learning what it feels like to lose control. You stupid girl. Her voice cracked. You've destroyed everything, including any chance you had with my son. Mother. Grayson appeared beside us, looking exhausted. That's enough. I hadn't seen him since the cafe 3 days ago. The dark circles under his eyes matched mine. Grayson. I started, but he cut me off. Save it. I just came to tell you that your plan worked. The board's reinstating me as CEO. His laugh was hollow. Turns out nothing motivates corporate ethics like federal investigations. It wasn't about the company, I said softly. No. He stepped closer. Then what was it about, Alara? Revenge? Teaching our parents a lesson? Or were you just playing games with all of us? Before I could answer, my father's voice boomed through the room. Alara Catherine Winslow. The crowd parted as Malcolm strode toward us, his face thunderous. You think this little stunt of yours changes anything? You've just proved exactly why you were never ready for real responsibility. Real responsibility? I laughed. Like manipulating your daughter? Using her to orchestrate a hostile takeover? Everything I did was to protect our legacy. Your legacy, I corrected. And now it's gone. The board's calling for your resignation, Father. They've already contacted the press. The slap echoed through the suddenly silent room. My cheek stung, but I stood my ground. Malcolm, Cordelia gasped. Grayson moved between us. That's enough. You're right, I said, touching my cheek. It is enough. All of it. The lies, the manipulation, the games. I'm done. I turned to leave, but Grayson caught my arm. Where will you go? Does it matter? I pulled away. We're all just pawns to them, Grayson. Always have been. Alara, wait. Let her go, Cordelia said. She's made her choice. As I walked out, I heard my father's voice one last time. You'll regret this, daughter. You have no idea what you've started. Outside, the Mediterranean night was warm, but I felt cold to my bones. My phone buzzed with Lila's message. SEC's expanding the investigation. They're looking into older deals now. Your father's empire. I turned off the phone. 2 families destroyed, decades of manipulation exposed. And for what? In trying to break free from their games, I'd played the biggest game of all. A text from an unknown number lit up my screen. Meet me at our cafe. One last time. Gee. I stared at the message until the screen went dark, wondering if there was anything left worth saving in the wreckage we'd created. The cafe was empty except for Grayson and, surprisingly, Cordelia. She sat alone at our usual table, looking smaller somehow, more fragile than I'd ever seen her. I asked her to come, Grayson said from behind me. There's something you need to know. I almost walked out, but something in his voice made me stay. I think we all know enough about each other's secrets. Not this one. Cordelia's hands trembled as she pulled out a worn envelope. This was from your mother. The air left my lungs. What? Catherine and I were friends once, Cordelia said softly. Before she married Malcolm, before everything changed. I took the envelope, recognizing my mother's handwriting immediately. The letter was dated just before her death, 15 years ago. She knew what Malcolm was becoming, Cordelia continued. The power, the control, it was consuming him. She asked me to protect you. Protect me? I laughed bitterly. By manipulating your son? By helping my father control my life? By keeping you away from all of it? Her voice cracked. But I failed. I became exactly what she feared Malcolm would become. Grayson touched my arm gently. Mother told me everything. About how she and your father pushed us together. Yes, but also about why she really opposed my innovations for the company. They were too much like Catherine's ideas, Cordelia whispered. Ideas that Malcolm shut down, that drove your mother away from the company. From him. My hands shook as I read the letter. My mother's words painted a picture I'd never seen. of a woman trying to break free from the same golden cage I'd been fighting. The merger wasn't just about business, Grayson said. Mother thought if she helped Malcolm control both companies, I could keep you from making your mother's mistakes, Cordelia finished. Instead, I made all of mine. I sank into a chair, the weight of 15 years of misunderstandings crushing me. Why tell me this now? Because you succeeded where your mother couldn't, Cordelia said. You broke free. And in doing so, you freed my son too. Grayson knelt beside me. I've declined the CEO position. I'm starting over, building something new. Something honest. The board won't like that, I said. The board won't have a choice. He smiled. Your exposé didn't just reveal our parents' manipulation. It showed my original business plan was viable. Investors are already calling. And you? I looked at Cordelia. I'm stepping away. From everything. She stood, straightening her shoulders. Your mother was right about one more thing. Sometimes love means letting go. She walked to the door, then paused. Catherine would be proud of you, Alara. Not for exposing the truth, but for being brave enough to live it. As she left, Grayson took my hand. I know we can't go back to before. Too much has happened. But maybe we can start over? I finished, thinking of my mother's letter, of patterns broken and new paths forged. No more lies, he said. No more games. No more hiding. I agreed, feeling something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. Sometimes the truth doesn't set you free. It just shows you who you really are. And sometimes that's enough. 6 months later, I stood in my mother's garden, the only part of the Winslow estate I'd kept after the dust settled. The roses she'd planted were blooming, defiant against the autumn chill. The board approved the merger, Lila said, joining me with 2 coffee cups. But not the one your father planned. I smiled, taking the coffee. How's he handling retirement? Better than expected, according to the nurses. The stress of the SEC investigation took its toll, but they say he's writing his memoirs. The irony wasn't lost on me. Malcolm Winslow, finally telling his own truth, even if nobody would believe it. My phone buzzed with a text from Grayson. Ready? You don't have to do this, Lila said, reading over my shoulder. Actually, I do. The new offices of Winslow Hale Innovation Hub occupied a converted warehouse in Brooklyn, about as far from Monte Carlo's glamour as you could get. Grayson waited outside, looking more relaxed in jeans and a sweater than he ever had in his designer suits. The investors are inside, he said, including my mother. I raised an eyebrow. Cordelia's investing? She sold her Monte Carlo apartment. Said it was time to build something real. Inside, familiar faces filled the conference room. Cordelia, dressed simply but elegantly. Several board members who'd jumped ship from both our former companies. And surprisingly, my father's former assistant, Janet, who'd been quietly feeding me information all along. Welcome to the first official board meeting, I began, standing at the front. We're here to launch something new. Not a tech empire or a family legacy, but a foundation dedicated to supporting innovative startups. Using both our family's resources, Grayson added, but none of their old rules. Cordelia cleared her throat. I have something for you, Alara. Found it while cleaning out my files. She handed me a photograph I'd never seen before, my mother and her, much younger, standing in front of their first office. Their failed startup before my father absorbed it into his empire. We had the right idea, Cordelia said softly. Just the wrong time. Wrong partners. And now, someone asked. I looked at Grayson, saw the same mix of hope and caution I felt. Now we do it differently. Total transparency. Equal partnerships. No more hidden agendas. Speaking of transparency, Lila chimed in from the back. Wait until you see next week's feature story. The new face of tech, breaking family chains. The meeting proceeded, but my mind kept returning to that photograph. 2 young women with dreams, before power and fear twisted everything. My mother had tried to protect me by keeping me away from this world. Cordelia had tried to protect Grayson by controlling it. But maybe true protection meant building something new from the ruins of the old. Later, back in the garden, Grayson found me staring at the roses. Having second thoughts, he asked. No. I touched a bloom, feeling its thorns. Just remembering something my mother wrote in her letter. The truth isn't always about exposing secrets. Sometimes it's about creating something honest in a world built on lies. He took my hand, careful of the thorns. Think we managed that? I looked at him, seeing not the man who'd approached me in Monte Carlo, but someone new. Someone real. We're about to find out.
The autumn sunlight streamed through the windows of Boston General Hospital's pediatric ward, which was as busy as any other weekday. Olivia Brown carefully checked the 4-drip rate and smiled gently at the 8-year-old girl lying in bed. "How's the pain?" "A little better." When the girl nodded slightly, Olivia breathed a sigh of relief. She placed her hand on her swollen belly and gently rubbed it in circles. The movement of her 7-month pregnancy made her feel the definite presence of life within. "Brown, you really should go take a break," her colleague Carol Johnson called out. "You're skipping lunch again, aren't you?" Olivia smiled apologetically. "I was so busy I didn't notice." "You need to eat properly for the baby's sake," Carol said with a serious expression. "I bought sandwiches from the cafeteria, let's eat together." As the two sat in the break room, Carol stared intently at Olivia's face. "Have you heard anything lately?" Olivia shook her head. "Nothing from Jason. He's been gone for 2 months now." She sighed deeply. She still remembered that day vividly. In her 5th month of pregnancy, when her husband Jason returned from work, he seemed unusually restless. And the next morning, after Olivia had left for work, he packed his bags and left the house. All that remained was a short note: "I need some time away. I think you and the baby will be fine." That was it. "Have you consulted a lawyer?" Carol asked worriedly. "Not yet. Somehow I can't accept it as reality," Olivia answered in a small voice. "We never even talked about divorce or anything." Carol took her hand encouragingly. "If you need anything at all, just say the word. We're all here to support you." "Thank you," Olivia smiled gratefully. "It really helps." After finishing her shift that day, Olivia checked her phone in the hospital parking lot. There were 3 missed calls from her sister Rachel. With a deep sigh, Olivia called her back. "Finally you called," Rachel's voice had an edge of irritation. "Mom's been worried." "I was working," Olivia answered in a tired voice. "Is something wrong?" "It's about the baby shower. Mom wants to have it at our house." Olivia frowned. "Carol's already planning it, so I need to check with her." "But it's a family event, why leave it to someone else?" Rachel's voice was prickly. "Mom will be hurt." Olivia gripped the steering wheel in silence. Since childhood, she and her sister Rachel had been in competition with each other. Especially when it came to their mother Martha's affection, Rachel had always had the upper hand. "I'll think about it," Olivia said before hanging up. Arriving at her apartment, Olivia sank deep into the sofa. Her wedding photo with Jason hung on the wall. He was a medical technician and she was a nurse when they met at the hospital and married 3 years ago. Olivia was drawn to his gentle smile and sincere character, and thought their marriage had been peaceful and happy. She still couldn't forget how delighted he was when they found out she was pregnant. That's why his sudden disappearance made no sense. The phone rang. It was her father, William. Her father, who ran a construction company, had been living separately from her mother for a year, but he and Olivia kept in frequent contact. "How are you doing? Is the baby well?" At her father's kind voice, Olivia felt slightly relieved. "We're both fine, Dad." "Good. I worry about you. How about dinner this weekend?" "Yes, I'd like that." "And?" William hesitated a bit. "I heard from your mother. About the baby shower." Olivia closed her eyes. "I haven't decided anything yet." "You don't have to force yourself. If you don't want it, just say no clearly." "I know. But Mom and Rachel." "Don't worry about those two," William's voice was strong and protective. "If anything happens, I'll be there right away." That's a promise. After hanging up, Olivia began typing a message to Jason. The baby is doing well. We're having a baby shower soon. I wonder if you'll come. Her finger hovered over the send button, but in the end, the message was saved to her drafts folder. The next day, Carol excitedly talked about her plans for the baby shower. It'll be a small but lovely party. Your colleagues from the hospital are coming too. Thank you, Olivia said with heartfelt gratitude. But my mother and sister. We'll invite them too, Carol showed understanding. But we're hosting it. I won't budge on that. That night, Olivia was surprised to see a message from Rachel. Mom and I went shopping for the party. We've prepared wonderful presents, so look forward to it. Olivia replied with a sense of unease. Thank you. Please get in touch with Carol too. Thinking about Rachel made Olivia's heart complicated. Her sister had married Greg 3 years ago and had immediately expressed a desire for children, but she hadn't been able to get pregnant, and fertility treatments hadn't been successful. When Olivia announced her pregnancy, Rachel had congratulated her verbally, but her eyes revealed jealousy. Why do you always get everything first? Rachel had once spat out in a drunken moment. Olivia lay in bed and spoke to her baby. You'll be fine. Mommy will protect you. On Sunday afternoon, gentle sunlight streamed into Olivia's apartment. Colorful balloons and pastel decorations adorned the living room, and a banner reading, "Welcome Baby," hung on the wall. All the preparations for the baby shower had been meticulously arranged by Carol and her friends. Thank you so much for throwing such a lovely party, Olivia said, embracing Carol. Of course, Carol smiled. You're always thinking of others, so today you need to be the center of attention. The doorbell rang, and the first guests arrived. Hospital colleagues arrived one after another with presents, offering warm words to Olivia. And sooner than expected, Martha and Rachel made their appearance. Olivia, are you all right? You look pale, Martha touched her daughter's cheek with a worried expression. But there seemed to be something else lurking in her eyes. I'm fine, Mom, Olivia gently brushed off her mother's hand. Rachel appeared with Greg, carrying a large gift bag. Sister, this is from us, she said brightly, but her voice seemed a little too high-pitched. Greg nodded silently, seeming somewhat uncomfortable. As time passed, the room filled with laughter and conversation. Olivia opened presents, expressing gratitude for the cute baby clothes and necessities. Games began, with everyone participating in Guess the Baby Word and Diaper-Changing Race. However, Olivia occasionally noticed Rachel and Martha whispering together, which made her uneasy. Now, time for a toast. Martha suddenly announced, and sparkling cider was distributed to everyone. Olivia received a non-alcoholic version. Martha raised her wine glass high and stood in the center of the room. Thank you all for gathering today for the baby shower of our beloved daughter, Olivia. Applause erupted from the audience, and Olivia smiled. However, Martha's next words froze her smile. But actually, I have another important announcement today. The atmosphere in the room changed, and silence fell. Carol sent Olivia a glance, wearing a confused expression. As you all know, Olivia is going through a difficult time, Martha continued. Her husband Jason abandoned her and the baby. Olivia gasped. Mom, stop. But Martha ignored her words and raised her voice further. I know how difficult it is to raise a child alone. Especially while working as a busy nurse. Rachel stood next to Martha and smiled. There was a victorious light in her eyes. That's why we, as a family, have made a decision, Martha stared at Olivia. Olivia, give this child to your infertile sister. Your husband ran away, and there's no way you can raise it alone. Surprised voices rose from the audience, and Carol cried out, "Are you kidding?" Olivia was speechless, only able to stare at her mother. Rachel smirked and said, "Mom's right. I'll raise the baby for you. Greg and I will be wonderful parents. Your child won't want for anything." Greg's face was rigid, looking at his wife in bewilderment. He was clearly surprised by this turn of events as well. "This is," Olivia finally managed to say, "insane. This is my baby." "But you're still young," Martha said in a lecturing tone. "You can have more children. This is Rachel's last chance." As the room buzzed with commotion, Martha approached Olivia and reached out toward her belly. "This child belongs to your sister from today." Just as Olivia stepped back, the front door swung open forcefully. And there stood Jason. "That is absolutely unacceptable." His low, resolute voice echoed through the room, and everyone held their breath. Jason, holding a folder of documents in his hand, walked straight toward Olivia. The color drained from Martha and Rachel's faces, and the room was enveloped in complete silence. Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes as she stared at Jason in disbelief. The atmosphere in the room was tense. "I'm Jason Brown," he said as if introducing himself. It wasn't directed at the people who already knew him, but rather seemed like an announcement to the situation that had changed during his 2-month absence. "I am Olivia's husband and this child's father." Those words tightened the atmosphere in the room even further. Jason looked thinner than before, but his eyes were filled with strong determination. He stood next to Olivia and placed his hand on her shoulder protectively. "It seems the time has come to explain why I left." Jason scanned the room before fixing his gaze on Rachel. "First, let me be clear. I did not abandon my wife and child. I had to leave to protect them." Martha tried to speak, but Jason raised his hand to stop her. "Rachel, I'll give you a chance to tell the truth. Or should I tell it for you?" Rachel's face turned pale, and she looked at Greg. Greg wore a confused expression, his gaze moving between his wife and brother-in-law. "What are you talking about?" Rachel feigned an innocent voice. "What does your running away have to do with me?" Jason took a deep breath and pulled out several papers from the folder. "These are records of meetings with a lawyer. And this," he took out his smartphone, "is a record of your messages and voicemails." "What's going on?" Greg raised his voice. "Rachel, what is he talking about?" Olivia was confused, looking at Jason with an expression mixed with fear and surprise. "What's happening?" Jason took her hand and held it gently. "I'm sorry, I couldn't tell you. But I think you'll understand once everything is revealed." He manipulated his smartphone screen and turned the speaker to maximum volume. What flowed from it was unmistakably Rachel's voice. "Jason, don't you understand how I feel? You married the wrong person. You should have been with me, not my sister." The room fell silent again. Olivia gasped, staring at Rachel. Rachel stood speechless. Jason played another message. "If you don't leave my sister, I don't know what might happen to her and the baby. We're destined to be together. I'll remove anything that stands in our way." "This must be edited," Martha shouted. "Jason, you're just running from responsibility." "Do you really think so?" Jason calmly asked. Then he took out another document. "These are records of your chats with Rachel. As it happens, Rachel backed them up to the cloud." Jason began reading the contents aloud. Martha's messages to Rachel contained detailed plans to take Olivia's child. They included methods for Rachel to legally adopt Olivia's baby, necessary documents, and even plans to create false medical records claiming Olivia was mentally unstable. And most surprisingly, Jason opened another envelope. Rachel's infertility is a lie. Greg suddenly stood up. What? She simply didn't want to get pregnant. Jason picked up medical records. Greg, you might have thought she was going to a fertility clinic, but what she was actually receiving was contraception. Rachel, is this true? Greg's voice trembled. Everyone in the room turned their gaze to Rachel. After a moment of silence, she suddenly exploded with emotion. Yes. It's all true, she shouted. Because Olivia always has everything. At school, at home, she was always the best. Tears welled up in her eyes. And then she got Jason too, when I liked him first. Greg stepped back, shocked. Our entire marriage was a lie. No. You were important to me, but... Rachel was at a loss for words. So you tried to seduce Jason, Olivia finally spoke. Her voice trembled, but there was strength in it. And tried to take my child. Olivia, you don't understand. Rachel cried. I wanted a baby too. But things didn't go as I wanted. So you tried to steal someone else's child. Carol said angrily. That's criminal. Martha also stood up and began making excuses. I was thinking of Rachel. Olivia has always been strong, so I thought she could manage on her own. But Rachel is different, she needs help. Be quiet, Mom, Olivia said firmly. Her eyes mixed with anger and sadness. Now I understand everything you and Rachel have been doing behind my back. And the real reason Jason left. She looked up at Jason. I never understood. Why you left without explanation, but you were trying to protect us. Jason nodded. Olivia, I'm really sorry I couldn't tell you the truth. But with Rachel's threats continuing, I didn't want to put extra stress on you. Especially during your pregnancy. He squeezed her hand. I was working with a lawyer to gather evidence and prepare to protect you and the baby. In the corner of the room, Greg was confronting Rachel. 3 years, you've been deceiving me. His voice was deeply wounded. Greg, please. Rachel tried to grab his arm, but Greg pulled away. It's over, he said simply. Then he raised his voice toward the center of the room. Olivia, Jason, I'm truly sorry. I knew nothing about this. Carol had already taken out her phone. I'm calling the police. This is clearly a case of threatening behavior. Martha suddenly seemed to panic. The police? No, bringing family matters outside. This isn't a family matter, Martha, Carol said coldly. This is a crime. Olivia was trembling in Jason's arms. He held her tightly and whispered, It's okay now. You and the baby, you're both safe. The other guests looked at Olivia and Jason with surprise and empathy. Their expressions clearly showed support for the couple and condemnation for Martha and Rachel. I'm glad you came back, Olivia said tearfully to Jason. But what happens now? Jason touched her cheek and answered, We'll take it one step at a time. What matters is that I'll never leave again. Olivia nodded at those words, feeling a sense of security she hadn't felt for a long time. In her womb, the baby moved slightly. As if sensing that everything was finally starting to move in the right direction. Olivia and Jason found a quiet moment alone in the kitchen. In the living room, Carol was explaining the situation to the other guests, while Martha and Rachel sat separately, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Greg stood by the window, silently staring at the scenery outside. Will you tell me everything? Olivia asked, holding Jason's hand. When did Rachel? Jason exhaled deeply. Actually, it started before we met. I met Rachel at a hospital charity event. She was already dating Greg but showed an abnormal interest in me. He continued, choosing his words carefully, when I was introduced to you, my heart was already set on you. I felt sorry for Rachel, but she was just an acquaintance to me, and she had a partner. I thought there wouldn't be any problem. Olivia nodded quietly. But Rachel didn't think so. Right. At first, it was minor harassment. Occasional strange messages, appearing and pretending it was a coincidence. I thought it stopped after we got married. Jason paused. But from the day you announced your pregnancy, her behavior began to escalate. The pregnancy was the trigger. Olivia placed her hand on her belly. She appeared at my office saying I made a mistake in destiny. And gradually, her words became more threatening. Jason's expression darkened. My concern that she might harm you or the baby grew, so I consulted a lawyer. His advice was to gather evidence and to get close to Rachel to reveal her plans. So that's why you left. Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes. Jason gently touched her cheek. I couldn't tell you the truth because I was worried about you during your pregnancy. I didn't want to give you extra stress. And he hesitated a little. If I had told you, I couldn't predict what Rachel might do. I needed to distance myself for your safety. But even one message. I wanted to contact you every day. But Rachel was around you, and I didn't know what she was monitoring. So my only way to know how you were doing was through your father, William. Olivia's eyes widened. Dad knew too. He provided wonderful support. He helped gather evidence and was always concerned about your safety. Jason smiled. Actually, At that moment, the front door opened, and William Tanner appeared. He quickly assessed the situation in the room and headed straight to the kitchen. Olivia. He embraced his daughter strongly. Jason called me. Are you all right? Dad. Olivia shed tears of relief in her father's arms. Why did you come? I got an emergency call from Jason. I came right away. William sent a grateful look to Jason. Have the police arrived yet? They just did. 2 police officers entered the kitchen. They explained that they needed to briefly hear from everyone to understand the situation. Everyone was gathered in the living room, and the police officers began taking statements one by one. Martha suddenly stood up and shouted, "This is all a misunderstanding." Martha, William's voice was low and stern. What you did is unforgivable. This has nothing to do with you. Martha argued. What right do you have after leaving the house? I have the right to protect my daughter and grandchild, William answered firmly. Even though we're separated, I am still Olivia's father. The police officers turned back to Martha and Rachel, saying, We'd like to discuss this matter in more detail at the station. Rachel suddenly began laughing hysterically. Right, I'm always the villain. Always. Olivia is always the perfect daughter, perfect sister, perfect wife. And now she'll be the perfect mother. Olivia quietly stood up. Rachel, I'm not perfect. I was never as attractive or social as you. But I've just been walking my own path honestly. Her voice trembled but had strength. I really can't understand why you tried to take my baby. This is beyond mere jealousy. You don't understand. Rachel shouted. Always, always. Her voice broke off, and she suddenly collapsed into a chair. Greg spoke up for the first time, Olivia, Jason. I'm truly sorry. I knew nothing. Deep sadness and shame were evident on his face. I thought Rachel was receiving fertility treatment. That she would do such things. Olivia sent him a gentle look. It's not your responsibility, Greg. The police officers urged Martha and Rachel to come to the station. Rachel seemed to have lost the will to resist and quietly complied. Martha kept repeating, "I was thinking of you," to Olivia until the end. After the two were escorted out of the room, a heavy silence fell. Greg bowed briefly to Jason, saying, "I'd like to hear the details tomorrow," before leaving. The remaining guests also began to leave at Carol's prompting. "Olivia, I'll call you tomorrow," Carol said, embracing her friend tightly. "If you need anything, just say the word." In the end, only Olivia, Jason, and William remained. Olivia, looking exhausted, sank deep into the sofa. "Unbelievable," she murmured. "We're family." William sat next to his daughter and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Olivia, Martha, and Rachel's actions are unforgivable. But for now, you should think about getting some rest." Olivia looked up at her father. "Dad, you were in contact with Jason." William nodded. "When he first contacted me, I was angry. But after hearing the circumstances, I understood how much he wanted to protect you and the baby." He nodded toward Jason. "He truly loves you." Jason took Olivia's hand. "Olivia, we don't need to decide what to do right now. But if you'll forgive me, I want to start over." "Start over?" Olivia searched his eyes. "Yes. I never want to leave you again. Together with you and the baby, as a family." His voice was earnest. Olivia was silent for a while, but eventually squeezed his hand back. "It might take time, but I think we can overcome this." A relieved smile spread across Jason's face. William watched the two with satisfaction. "Well, you too." William stood up and looked around the room. "This place is full of bad memories from today. How about spending some time at my cottage? It's a quiet place with a view of the ocean." Olivia nodded with tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Dad." Jason gently put his arm around her shoulder and whispered, "Let's make good memories from now on." The baby in Olivia's womb moved again. This time more strongly, as if in agreement. She smiled and placed her hand on her belly. 2 months later, cheers echoed in the obstetrics ward of Boston General Hospital. "Congratulations, Olivia. It's a healthy baby girl." Olivia's sweaty face showed a mixture of fatigue and happiness as she reached out to the tiny baby who had begun to cry. Jason stood beside his wife, squeezing her hand, tears in his eyes. "You're truly amazing," he said in a voice trembling with emotion. "For giving birth to such a beautiful girl." "Lily," Olivia whispered, cradling the baby in her arms. "Lily Hope Brown. That's her name." "Perfect," Jason nodded. "A flower of hope, perfect for a new beginning." The C-section delivery had gone as planned. Both mother and baby were healthy, and the doctors looked relieved. Carol had attended her friend's delivery and was now in the hallway sharing the good news with William. On discharge day, Olivia and Jason took their new child home. It wasn't their previous apartment, but a small house in the suburbs purchased with William's help. A banner reading, "Welcome Home Lily," hung at the entrance, and inside, the living room was furnished in gentle colors with a baby crib for Lily. "Today marks the beginning of our new life," Jason gently embraced Olivia's shoulder. Their new family's happiness gradually dispelled the dark shadows of the past. Rachel received probation for threatening behavior and was ordered by the court to undergo psychiatric counseling. Greg had filed for divorce and already moved to another state. Martha was isolated from the family, and divorce proceedings with William had begun. On a sunny Saturday a year later, Olivia and Jason held a small ceremony attended only by close friends. It was a special ritual to renew their marriage vows. 1-year-old Lily, in her father's arms, gazed at her mother's wedding dress. "I vow," Olivia said, looking into Jason's eyes, "to face any storm together with you." "I also vow," Jason responded, "to protect you and Lily for the rest of my life." William cherished his time with his granddaughter and made sure to visit every weekend. Nothing gave him more pleasure than sitting with Lily on his knee, reading her stories. Meanwhile, Rachel had begun to reflect on her actions. She was seriously committed to therapy, beginning to understand the extent of the damage her obsession and jealousy had caused. Martha reflected on her mistakes in solitude and one day sent Olivia a letter of apology. Olivia read it but wasn't ready to forgive her yet. One evening, Olivia sat on the porch holding Lily, watching the sunset with Jason. "Do you think," she said quietly, "that someday the family's wounds will heal?" Jason gently put his arm around her shoulder. "It will take time, but I think there's a possibility. But for now," he kissed Lily's head gently, "the most important thing is to cherish our little family." Olivia nodded, looking at her husband and daughter. Her life had taken an unexpected direction, but in the end, she had found true happiness. Mornings in Chicago start early. The headlights of cars traveling through the fog-shrouded downtown streets cut through the still dark air. At a small cafe on Franklin Street called Morning Blue, preparations were underway an hour before opening time. "Ellie, the salt shaker at table 4 is empty," Polly's voice called from the kitchen, and Eleanor Miller, known as Ellie, smiled as she replied, "I'll refill it right away." Ellie tied her shoulder-length light brown hair back and straightened her blue apron. She had worked at this cafe for 5 years as an ordinary waitress. At least, that's what she led her family to believe. In reality, Ellie was the owner of Comfort Table, a popular restaurant chain with 75 locations across 12 eastern states. Morning Blue was the first small cafe she had acquired, and she still enjoyed occasionally working shifts there. "Hey, Ellie. You're early again today," said Polly, the head chef and one of the employees Ellie especially trusted. "It's such a waste for a beautiful woman like you to be working this job from morning till night." Ellie laughed quietly. "I do it because I enjoy it. Besides, I like interacting with people. What does your family think about you working here?" Ellie's expression clouded slightly. "They don't really care much about me." Her phone vibrated in her pocket. She took it out and looked at the screen. It was a message from her sister Vanessa. "My boutique finally got featured in Chicago Style magazine. Mom and Dad are throwing a celebration party Saturday night. Can you come?" The message ended with a winking emoji and an emoji of a woman in a fancy dress. Ellie sighed. Vanessa was the center of attention in the family. With her long blonde hair, sophisticated appearance, and flamboyant personality, she was adored by their parents, Robert and Diana. Her high-end boutique, Vanessa's, which she had started a year ago, was already creating a buzz locally. Ellie and Vanessa were as different as if they had grown up on separate planets. While Vanessa focused on glamour and appearances, Ellie preferred a simple, practical lifestyle. Their parents constantly praised Vanessa's success while dismissively referring to Ellie as just a waitress. Instead of replying to the message, Ellie returned her phone to her pocket and pulled out an old leather-bound book from beneath the counter. The worn cover had Mabel's recipe collection handwritten on it. This was a keepsake from her grandmother Mabel, who had passed away when Ellie was 10, but had been the most significant influence in her life. Grandmother Mabel was a strong woman who had survived the Great Depression and had always told Ellie, "Win with substance, not appearances." As she gently opened the recipe book, an old photograph fell out. It showed 10-year-old Ellie and 6-year-old Vanessa making pies in the kitchen with grandmother Mabel. Ellie could almost hear Mabel's words, Someday you'll understand what true family means." Ellie returned the photo to its place and closed the book. She had established comfort table to fulfill her grandmother's teachings. The restaurants offered a homey atmosphere with quality meals and operated under the motto of treating all customers like family. And indeed, her employees had become like a real family to her. The doorbell rang, and the first customer entered. As Ellie welcomed them with a smile, she decided to reply to the message, "I'll be there. Let me know the time." After her shift ended, Ellie headed to a downtown high-rise office building, the headquarters of Comfort Table. As she passed through the glass doors, the receptionist greeted her cheerfully. "Good morning. I've left the board meeting materials on your desk." Ellie nodded. "Thank you, Beth." While stepping into the elevator, she checked a new message from Vanessa, Saturday, 7 p.m. At Dad's company penthouse. "Dress up. I want to show you off." Ellie smiled wryly. Vanessa's everyone referred to her wealthy friends and their parents' social circle acquaintances. They probably all thought of Ellie as just the poor waitress. Reaching her office, she stood by the window overlooking the Chicago skyline. In the distance was a small park where she had spent time with her grandmother as a child. Ellie made up her mind. She would attend this party and pretend to celebrate her sister's success, even if her family didn't understand who she really was, to honor grandmother Mabel's teachings. Saturday evening, Ellie opened her closet at home and surveyed her limited selection of dressy clothes. She chose a simple black dress and stood before the mirror. She loosely tied up her hair and added a modest pearl necklace. There was nothing flashy about her appearance, but it had plenty of elegance. "This will do," she told herself, checking her watch. Before heading to the party, Ellie decided to stop by the flagship location of Comfort Table. Located in prime downtown real estate, this was the restaurant she was most proud of. When she entered the busy kitchen during dinner service, the staff looked surprised. "Going out tonight?" Chef Marco asked while drying his hands with a towel. "My sister's party," Ellie replied, a little embarrassed. "Is everything running smoothly?" "Perfectly." Marco spread his arms wide. "Tonight's special is selling like crazy. The customer feedback has been wonderful." Ellie made her rounds through the dining area. The tables were full, with warm laughter and conversation filling the restaurant. As she passed by, several regular customers noticed and greeted her. "Ellie. It's been a while," an elderly woman waved. "Special occasion? You rarely dress up." "Just a small family gathering," Ellie said quietly as she approached the woman's table. Dorothy had been a regular since the day the restaurant opened and sometimes brought her grandchildren along. "What you've built is wonderful," Dorothy took Ellie's hand. "Dear Mabel would certainly be proud." Tears welled up in Ellie's eyes. Dorothy had been grandmother Mabel's close friend. "Thank you, I'm glad to hear that." Before leaving the restaurant, Ellie spoke to all the staff. They all took pride in their work and respected each other. Everyone felt valued here, that was Ellie's management philosophy. "I'm off. Call me if anything comes up." "Have a good time," the staff called out in unison. Getting into a taxi, Ellie took a deep breath. On the way to the penthouse owned by her father's company, she gazed at the city lights flowing past the window. She was half afraid, half resigned about what might happen. As the elevator rose to the penthouse, the party was already at its peak. When the doors opened, the popping of champagne and sophisticated laughter filled the air. Ellie stood modestly at the entrance. The room was lavishly decorated with silver and gold balloons everywhere. Enlarged copies of the magazine article featuring Vanessa's boutique adorned the walls, and a champagne tower gleamed in the center. "Ellie! You came!" Vanessa approached, her blonde hair swaying. She wore a wine-red satin dress and glittering jewelry. Congratulations, Vanessa, Ellie said quietly. It's a big success. Thank you. Vanessa carelessly flicked her wrist, rattling her bracelet. Oh, is that your idea of dressing up? She frowned at Ellie's outfit. Well, never mind. Have you greeted Mom and Dad? Before Ellie could answer, their parents approached. Robert Miller, 65, had achieved success as the president of a real estate development company. Beside him stood Diana Miller, always impeccably dressed. Eleanor, you came, Diana formally kissed her cheek. You might consider wearing some accessories. Ellie smiled. It's a lovely party. Nothing's too good for Vanessa, Robert said proudly. Her talent and ambition are genuine. This boutique is proof of her creativity. Yes, she is wonderful, Ellie agreed. You two have really supported her. Well, I provided a little financial assistance, Robert waved his hand. But the success is due to her own talent. Oh, there's Jeremy, Diana pointed. Vanessa's business partner. A wonderful young man. Ellie turned to see a man in a dark suit. Jeremy Foster, 38, was known as a local businessman. He was engaged in an intense conversation with Vanessa, but something about him triggered Ellie's intuition. How did they meet? Ellie asked. At a social event, Diana answered. He recognized Vanessa's talent immediately. He offered to invest and help launch the business. Ellie stared at Jeremy. There was something calculated about his smile. And his hand placed on her sister's shoulder suggested an intimacy beyond that of business partners. As the party progressed, Ellie stood quietly observing from a corner with a champagne glass. Vanessa basked in the spotlight, surrounded by her socialite friends. Their parents watched her proudly, telling each arriving guest about their daughter's success. Do you prefer being alone? Ellie turned to find Jeremy Foster standing beside her. Up close, his charm was even more evident, but there was a calculating gleam in his eyes. Sometimes, Ellie replied matter-of-factly. So you're Vanessa's business partner? That's right, he said confidently. She has tremendous talent. We make an excellent team. How exactly do you collaborate? Ellie asked. Jeremy hesitated slightly. Well, I provide funding and connections, and she brings her design sense. A perfect combination. At that moment, Ellie noticed Vanessa behind Jeremy, beckoning him with a worried expression. Excuse me, Jeremy said abruptly. I'm being called. After he left, Ellie casually walked in their direction. Near the balcony doors, they were arguing intensely in hushed voices. Not now, Vanessa whispered. Wait until the contract is finalized. We don't have time, Jeremy replied in a low voice. The investor wants an answer by tomorrow. Can't you get more from your parents? I'll try. But they've already given a substantial amount. Ellie quietly backed away. A sense of unease spread through her chest. Was something wrong? Was Vanessa's boutique truly successful? Or was it all surface glamour? Setting down her champagne glass, Ellie took a deep breath. She had a feeling something would happen tonight. And she was mentally prepared for whatever came. The party reached its climax, with champagne glasses repeatedly filled. Ellie tried to remain inconspicuous, but when Vanessa took a microphone, everyone's attention turned to the center of the room. Thank you all for coming tonight, Vanessa said with a perfect smile. This past year has been an incredible journey. Having Vanessa's featured in Chicago Style magazine is like a dream come true. Applause erupted, and Vanessa accepted it with an intoxicated expression. I'm happy to prove that with talent and effort, any dream can be achieved, she continued. Of course, I'm grateful to my parents who have always supported me. Dad, Mom, I couldn't have made it this far without your love and encouragement. Their parents beamed, embracing each other. Ellie stood by the wall, watching quietly. And I'd also like to thank my wonderful business partner, Jeremy Foster. Vanessa pointed to Jeremy, who responded with a sophisticated smile. Without his experience and insight, this business would not have succeeded. Ellie observed Jeremy's face. He looked confident and triumphant. But there was something calculating in his eyes. Finally, Vanessa's voice suddenly changed. We have a special guest tonight. My sister, Eleanor. Surprised by the unexpected introduction, Ellie was startled. All eyes in the room turned to her at once. Vanessa pointed to her, and Ellie reluctantly stepped forward. Everyone, this is my sister, Vanessa said in a somewhat haughty tone. She works as a waitress at a cafe called Morning Blue. How many years has it been, Ellie? 5. That's right, Ellie answered quietly. She was beginning to understand Vanessa's intention. She always prefers a simple life. Vanessa looked her sister up and down in her simple black dress. We're quite different. I take risks and chase big dreams. While Ellie. She paused momentarily, then continued in a way that invited laughter from the audience. Still a waitress. Why not start a business? Oh, that's right, because you don't have the talent. A ripple of laughter spread through the room. Mother Diana also laughed discreetly, and several groups exchanged glances. Ellie's cheeks burned hot as humiliation spread through her chest. Nevertheless, she struggled to maintain her composure. Vanessa. Robert gently admonished, but it was merely a formality. His eyes still gazed proudly at his daughter. Sorry, just joking, Vanessa shrugged, but there was malice in her voice. But my sister and I have taken such different paths. I've established my name in the fashion world, and Ellie. She paused. Well, she's chosen her own kind of life. Ellie said nothing. Though anger boiled inside her, she recalled Grandmother Mabel's words, true strength isn't in silently enduring insults, but in speaking the truth at the right moment. Just then, a click sound from a microphone came from across the room. Everyone turned to see a well-dressed middle-aged man standing next to the reception table. Excuse me, his voice was calm but resonated throughout the room. May I say a few words? Vanessa was clearly confused, unable to hide her bewilderment at this unexpected occurrence. Of course, who are you again? Michael Reynolds, the man stepped forward. He was about 45, with black hair flecked with gray, sharp eyes, and wore a perfectly tailored suit. Ellie's eyes widened in surprise. Michael Reynolds was one of the key investors in Comfort Table. She never expected to see him here. Vanessa Miller, congratulations on your success, Michael said politely. It's a wonderful evening. However, there's one correction I'd like to make. The room fell silent. Vanessa tried to maintain her smile, but was clearly anxious. Actually, I invest in Eleanor Miller's company. Those words caused a stir throughout the room. Vanessa stood momentarily with her mouth open, and the parents exchanged confused glances. I don't understand, Robert said. Eleanor doesn't have a business to invest in. She's just a waitress. Michael smiled. No, she is not a waitress. At least, not just that. He looked toward Ellie. Her expression had changed slightly, with determination shining in her eyes. Ellie gave a small nod. Eleanor Miller is the founder and owner of Comfort Table, Michael announced to the entire room. Many of you probably know this restaurant chain. It has 75 locations across 12 eastern states, with annual sales of approximately $120 million. The color drained from Vanessa's face. The parents stood dumbfounded. People throughout the room gasped in surprise and began whispering to each other. So. Michael slowly raised the microphone and scanned the room. Who here is truly successful? Silence spread. Vanessa lost all color, her hand trembling as she gripped her glass. Jeremy was visibly disturbed, glancing toward the exit. Ellie quietly stepped forward. Her gait was dignified, and her face showed calm confidence. Michael handed her the microphone. "Thank you, Michael," Ellie said quietly. She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of her sister, parents, and the gathered crowd. "I apologize for keeping this truth hidden for so long. But there was a reason." She paused momentarily, taking a deep breath. "I started my restaurant business 10 years ago, beginning with a small cafe. Following my grandmother Mabel's teachings, I focused on quality of service and integrity rather than appearances and flashiness." Ellie's voice gradually grew stronger. "Comfort Table has now grown into a chain with 75 locations. We value a homey atmosphere and quality meals, and treat each employee like family." At her words, the entire room held its breath. Her parents' expressions gradually changed from shock to disbelief. "Why didn't you tell us?" Diana asked in a trembling voice. Ellie directed a gentle gaze at her mother. "Because I felt I couldn't meet the family's expectations. Because I grew up constantly being told I had no talent. And ultimately, because I wanted to prove my success by myself, on my own terms." Michael took the microphone again. "Ms. Eleanor's business model is praised within the industry. Her restaurants consistently rank at the top for both employee satisfaction and customer loyalty. Comfort Table has created not just a place to visit, but a place to come home to." Ellie looked at Vanessa. Her sister's face had paled, and beside her, Jeremy was visibly disturbed. "Sister." Vanessa's voice was thin. But before she could say anything, Jeremy began hastily crossing the room. Ellie spoke quietly but firmly, "The party isn't over, Jeremy. There's a bit more to discuss." Jeremy stopped in his tracks. He turned around, forcing a smile. "Is there something else you wanted to say?" Michael took the microphone again. "Actually, there's a bit more I'd like to share with everyone," he said calmly. "As an investor in the restaurant industry, I've seen various businesses. Comfort Table is one of the most honest and successful businesses I've been involved with." He pulled a folded newspaper article from his inside pocket. In last week's Business Week magazine, Comfort Table was selected as this year's most innovative restaurant chain. Annual sales exceed $120 million, and its employee benefit program ranks among the best in the industry. Copies of the article were passed from hand to hand. The parents' expressions gradually shifted from disbelief to a mixture of surprise and regret. "Ms. Eleanor's business model isn't just about pursuing profits," Michael continued. "She has created a family-like work environment, and employee turnover is less than half the industry average. This is a testament to her humanity and leadership." Robert and Diana exchanged glances, at a loss for words. Vanessa shrank slightly, and Jeremy was clearly uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Michael turned his gaze toward Jeremy. "And interestingly, I also had the opportunity to investigate Vanessa Miller's business. The boutique called Vanessa's appears successful on the surface. However, this is a private matter," Jeremy interrupted. "It's beyond the scope of this party." "No, it goes to the very essence of this party," Michael calmly responded. "Vanessa's is actually in serious financial trouble. And Mr. Jeremy Foster is not merely a business partner." The color drained from Vanessa's face. "Stop," she said in a small voice. Michael continued, "Mr. Foster has a pattern of approaching young female entrepreneurs, establishing special relationships, and then exploiting their businesses for profit. Furthermore, Vanessa's currently carries a debt of about $300,000. A murmur arose from the audience. Diana put her hand to her mouth, and Robert's face reddened with anger and confusion. "This is a lie." Jeremy raised his voice. Do you have any proof? I do, Ellie said quietly. She took the microphone and surveyed the room. I had a lawyer investigate. Mr. Jeremy has swindled funds from 3 young female entrepreneurs over the past 5 years using similar tactics. And, Vanessa. Ellie looked at her sister. Tears welled in Vanessa's eyes. Your business has been sustained by loans from our parents and your special relationship with Jeremy. And now, he's looking for his next target. Jeremy hurriedly headed for the door. I don't need to listen to this nonsense. Wait. Robert's voice echoed through the room. He displayed his anger toward the young man he had cared for like a son. Is this true? Jeremy hesitated momentarily, then sneered. Business can be tough, Robert. Your daughter was simply too naive. My advice was always on point. The problem was that she didn't follow it. With that, he left the room. Vanessa choked back a sob, and the parents were stunned. After a moment of silence, Ellie quietly said, Everyone, I apologize, but could we have some time to talk as a family? The guests exchanged glances and gradually filed out of the room. Michael lightly squeezed Ellie's shoulder and said, Call if you need anything, before leaving. Only Ellie, Vanessa, and their parents remained in the room. Why didn't you tell us? Robert asked in a trembling voice. Ellie took a deep breath, organizing emotions she had suppressed for years. Even if I had told you, you wouldn't have listened. Her voice was calm, but years of pain seeped through. No matter what I did, it was never enough. My opinions were always ignored, and my dreams were called mere escapism. She continued while pacing around the room. When I started my restaurant, who did I consult? I used grandmother Mabel's inheritance as seed money. Because she was the only one who believed in me. But such a great success. Diana choked on her words. You really succeeded, Ellie said quietly. Not pretend success, but real success. I treat my employees like family, and they respect me in return. My company aims not just for profit, but to improve people's lives. She turned toward Vanessa. Her sister sat on the sofa, raising her tear-stained face. I'm not blaming you, Vanessa, Ellie said quietly. You've just lived according to the values our parents gave you. You were taught that appearance and status are everything. But I really. Vanessa stammered. You have talent, Ellie said. There's no doubt about that. But true success comes from honesty and effort, not vanity and pretense. Ellie turned back to face her parents. Her eyes reflected years of suffering mixed with strength. The reason I endured despite being continuously denied was because I knew what real value is, which I learned from my grandmother. All you taught me was how a family shouldn't be. The room was engulfed in silence. Robert and Diana were speechless, and Vanessa was softly sobbing. My restaurants operate on the true principles of family, Ellie continued quietly but powerfully. Respecting each other, supporting one another, and leaving no one behind. This is the true meaning of family that I learned from grandmother Mabel. She looked out the window. Stars shone in the night sky. The choice is yours. Learn from this experience and reconsider what true value means, or continue with your false values. Ellie picked up her bag and headed for the door. I will continue on my path. I hope you all find what truly matters someday. As she was about to leave the room, Vanessa called in a small voice, Ellie. I need help. Ellie stopped and turned around. Take time to think, Vanessa. What do you really want? She said quietly. After that, we can talk. And with that, Ellie opened the door and left the party venue. There was a strange lightness in her chest. 6 months later, Chicago's autumn had turned the leaves golden. Ellie looked down at the city from her office's large window, gazing at an envelope on her desk. It was a letter from Vanessa. Comfort Table had continued to grow and now had locations throughout the eastern region. Last month, Forbes magazine had featured Ellie as one of 40 women leaders bringing change. Her management philosophy, creating a true family environment, was hailed as innovative within the industry, and speaking requests were pouring in. However, relationships with her family remained complicated. Vanessa's boutique had completely collapsed, and Jeremy had abandoned her for another female entrepreneur. Ironically, that woman already knew about his past and publicly rejected his advances. Jeremy's reputation had plummeted, forcing him to leave Chicago. Robert and Diana were also facing difficult times. They had lost most of their retirement savings investing in Vanessa's business and were now forced to live modestly. Their long-established position in society was also wavering. Ellie opened the letter. Vanessa's neat handwriting conveyed a humility she had never seen before. To my sister, over these past 6 months, I've thought about many things. My life choices, and above all, how I treated you. I won't make excuses. I was wrong. I finally understand the emptiness of living for vanity and appearances. I sincerely apologize for looking down on you and hurting you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know that's asking too much. I just hope that someday we might have the chance to talk again. With love, Vanessa. Ellie held the letter to her chest and took a deep breath. She hadn't written back yet. She hadn't been emotionally ready. But a month later, unexpected visitors came to Ellie's office. It was Vanessa and their parents. May we come in? Diana asked hesitantly. Her former arrogance was gone, replaced by weariness and regret. Robert couldn't look his daughter in the eye. His white hair had increased, and his shoulders were slightly rounded. Vanessa wasn't wearing her previous flashy clothes, but a simple blouse and jeans. Her makeup was subtle, and her expression showed humility. We'd like to talk, Vanessa said in a small voice. Ellie led them to the sofa. She tried to remain calm, but a whirlwind of complex emotions churned inside her. We were wrong, Robert finally managed to say. We neglected you for years. That is unforgivable. Our values were distorted, Diana continued, tearing up. We pursued appearances and status, losing sight of what truly matters. Vanessa clutched a handkerchief with trembling hands. I was completely crushed. But I needed that. To take a hard look at myself. Ellie looked at them quietly. Forgiveness takes time, she said softly. Trust, once lost, is difficult to regain. We understand, Vanessa nodded. Just, if you could give us a chance to start over. 6 more months passed, and Ellie offered Vanessa an internship at Comfort Table. The condition was starting from the bottom. Vanessa humbly accepted and began as a dishwasher. She was slowly but steadily regaining trust. The relationship with their parents was also gradually being mended. The healing process was long and sometimes painful, but efforts to understand each other anew continued. Every night, Ellie opened her grandmother Mabel's old recipe book and remembered her words. What true family means, she was still searching for that answer. But at least she understood her own worth and the meaning of true success. That was the most precious gift Mabel had left her. Mom, are you going to be late again today? Oliver stared at his mother, Amy, with his big blue eyes already showing resignation, as if he already knew the answer. I'm sorry, Oliver, Amy answered, gently stroking her son's hair. I got called in for an emergency night shift tonight. But I'll be home by tomorrow morning, and we can have breakfast together. As a nurse at Chicago General Hospital, Amy Foster's life was a constant battle against time. Since her husband Jason had died of lung cancer 2 years ago, she had been desperately working to support her household while raising her 6-year-old son Oliver alone. Oliver's smile was all that kept her going. "I'll try calling Lisa," Amy said, taking out her cell phone, but her expression clouded when she remembered her friend was also working tonight. There was no one else she could rely on. "Maybe we should call Grandma and Grandpa," Oliver suggested in a small voice. Amy caught her breath for a moment. Her mother, Barbara Harris, was one of the most authoritative women in town. Even in retirement, she still maintained influence in the local social circles. Her father, Charles, was a former bank branch manager with a mild temperament, but he was always submissive to his strong-willed wife's opinions. Since her marriage, Amy had constantly faced criticism from her mother. "Nursing is such an unstable profession, you could have married someone better, your parenting is half-hearted," those words still echoed in her ears. Barbara's criticism had only intensified after Amy's husband died. In contrast, Amy's younger sister Brooke was adored by their parents. She worked as a successful real estate agent dealing with luxury properties and enjoyed a free, single lifestyle. Barbara took pride in Brooke's success and constantly sang her praises. "But Mom, if we can't find anyone else, we have to ask Grandma, right?" Oliver's words made Amy take a deep breath. He was right. For her son's sake, she had to put her pride aside. On the phone, Barbara agreed to watch Oliver, though with a hint of sarcasm. "You never plan ahead, do you?" "Well, we'll take care of him." That evening, Amy took Oliver to Barbara and Charles's luxurious home. The two-story white colonial mansion, surrounded by meticulously maintained gardens, symbolized their comfortable retirement. "Hello, Oliver," Barbara smiled at her grandson and kissed his cheek. She gave Amy a cold glance and said, "Would you like to come in? Though if you're in a hurry, don't feel obligated." "Thanks, but I really am in a hurry," Amy replied apologetically. "I brought Oliver's pajamas and change of clothes, plus his favorite book to read before bedtime." "We have experience raising children, you know," Barbara said. "Don't worry, we can manage for one night." Amy crouched down to speak to Oliver at eye level. "I'll come pick you up tomorrow morning. Be good and listen to Grandma and Grandpa, okay?" "Okay, Mom," Oliver hugged her tightly. Charles appeared from the living room. "Hey, Amy," he smiled kindly. "Don't worry, we'll take good care of Oliver." "Oh, that reminds me," Barbara suddenly said in a cheerful voice. "Brooke is coming over tonight. We're planning to go see a movie together." Amy turned around in surprise. "A movie? But Oliver has school tomorrow, so I'd like him to go to bed early." "It's fine to have a special night once in a while," Barbara waved her hand dismissively. "Children should be raised with more flexibility. You always worry too much." Amy was about to argue but glanced at the clock and gave up. She was already going to be late. "All right. But please don't keep him out too late." "Go on, then," Barbara gestured toward the door. "You'll be late for work." Amy suppressed her anxiety, waved goodbye to Oliver one last time, and headed to her car. As she watched her son's small figure and her parents standing beside him in the rearview mirror, an indescribable worry spread through her heart. As the car started moving, her cell phone rang. It was a message from Brooke. "We're going to see an Academy Award-nominated film tonight. It's not for children, but it'll be a good experience for Oliver. Don't worry, I'll take care of him." Amy almost stopped the car, but she had no time to spare. Patients at the hospital needed her. She took a deep breath and continued driving with a prayerful feeling. Walking down the busy corridors of Chicago General Hospital, Amy checked her phone. Still no contact from her parents. The clock showed 9 p.m., and she couldn't suppress the growing anxiety in her chest. Worried? Her colleague Lisa Dawson placed a hand on her shoulder. "Yes, a little," Amy forced a smile. "My parents took Oliver to a movie. My sister's with them too, but she's not used to handling children." Lisa gave her a sympathetic look. Why don't you call them? It's break time. Amy nodded and headed to the staff room. Charles answered the phone. Dad, is Oliver okay? Amy couldn't hide her concern. Oh, don't worry, Charles's voice sounded cheerful. We just finished watching the movie. Oliver's having a good time. Was the movie appropriate for him? Well, it might have been a bit mature. Charles answered, choosing his words carefully. But Barbara says cultural experiences are important too. Amy frowned. I see. But it's his bedtime now, so I'd like him to head home. Actually, we're planning to go to a new restaurant Brooke recommended, Charles said, sounding a bit apologetic. Barbara made a special reservation. But Dad, Oliver has school tomorrow. It's almost 10 o'clock, Amy's voice contained undisguisable irritation. Amy, you worry too much, Barbara's voice suddenly interrupted, apparently having taken the phone from her husband. It's fine to have a special night once in a while. We'll take responsibility. Mom, please. Oliver needs proper sleep. He won't be able to concentrate in class tomorrow. You're always too strict, Barbara's voice was critical. Creating fun childhood memories is important too. Besides, dining at a fine restaurant will be educational for him. Amy took a deep breath. She knew from years of experience that arguing with her mother wouldn't resolve anything. All right. But please don't stay out too late. Can I talk to Oliver? He's in the bathroom right now, Barbara said lightly. Don't worry, we'll take care of him. You focus on your work. Before the call ended, Amy heard Brooke's voice in the background, hurry up. We'll be late for our reservation. Amy closed the phone with trembling hands. She felt something tightening inside her. But she had to focus on the work in front of her. She took a deep breath and returned to the nurse's station. Everything okay? Lisa asked with concern. Yes, well, sort of, Amy smiled weakly. My mother thinks she's always right. Apparently, they're taking Oliver to a restaurant tonight. With school tomorrow. Lisa said, looking surprised. That's what I said. But she told me it's fine to have a special night once in a while, Amy mimicked her mother's tone. Amy, your mother is. Lisa said, choosing her words carefully. A bit too controlling, don't you think? Amy shrugged. She always has been. Dad is gentle, but he can't stand up to her. And my sister. She smiled bitterly. Brooke is a perfect miniature version of Mom. They both always criticize my life choices. She continued while picking up a patient's chart, but it's just for tonight. I'll pick him up tomorrow morning. The night shift passed busily. As emergency patients were brought in one after another, Amy focused on providing professional care. But each time she attended to a child patient, her heart turned toward Oliver. Even after 11 p.m., there was still no contact from her parents. At midnight, Amy tried calling them again during her break. No one answered. She tried their home number too, but got no response. Her anxiety grew rapidly. Lisa, no one's answering, Amy told her friend. I can't believe they'd still be out at this hour. They should be home by now. Maybe they've silenced their phones, Lisa suggested. If Oliver's sleeping, they wouldn't want to wake him. Maybe, but... Amy didn't seem convinced. I sent messages too, and there's no reply. At 2 a.m., as Amy's shift was coming to an end, her cell phone rang. Her mother's name appeared on the display. Amy quickly answered, "What's happening at this hour? Is Oliver okay?" "Amy, calm down," Barbara's voice sounded slightly intoxicated. "We had a wonderful time. After the restaurant, we stopped by Brooke's new condominium. It's a luxury property she just purchased. The view is magnificent. Amy's heart began racing. What about Oliver? Where is he? Oliver? Barbara's voice showed a moment of confusion. Isn't he with you? Amy felt the blood drain from her face. What do you mean? Isn't he with you? Well. Barbara's voice became distant, and Amy could hear her talking to someone. Charles, where's Oliver? Confused voices came from the other end of the line. Charles's voice, then Brooks. Amy, Barbara's voice came back. It seems he disappeared when we were leaving the theater. We thought he had gone home by himself. What? Amy shouted. Staff around her turned to look. A 6-year-old child can't get home by himself. How did you lose him? Calm down, Barbara said in a defensive tone. It was crowded after the movie ended. Brooke was concerned about the restaurant reservation time, and we were hurrying. We thought Oliver was behind us. Amy felt blood rushing to her head. You left a 6-year-old child behind. Mom, why didn't you check? Amy, stop blaming us, Barbara said coldly. It was an accident. Besides, he's a smart kid, so I thought he'd find his way home. In the background, Amy heard Brooke's voice, kids wander off all the time. Don't overreact. Amy's body shook with anger and fear. I'm calling the police right away. Where are you? I'm coming there immediately. We're at Brooke's condominium, Barbara said. But Amy, don't panic. I'm sure Oliver is safe. Amy hung up and immediately explained the situation to Lisa. Oliver is missing. My parents apparently left him at the theater. Lisa acted immediately. Call the police right away. I'll take over your remaining work, so hurry home. Amy called the police with trembling hands. My 6-year-old son is missing. He's a white boy with brown hair and blue eyes, last seen at the downtown movie theater. While she was explaining the details, a message arrived on her cell phone from an unknown number. Ma'am, this is Officer Thomas of the Chicago Police. We have a boy in our custody who appears to be your son. Please come to the central station immediately. Amy's heart pounded almost painfully. Was Oliver safe? What did it mean that he was in police custody? She quickly explained the situation to the police officer and promised to head there right away. As she was getting into her car outside the hospital, she called her parents again. Oliver has been taken into police custody. I'm heading to the central station now. Ah, that's good, Barbara's voice had relief mixed in. See? I told you he'd be all right. Amy couldn't contain her anger. All right? He's 6 years old. He was wandering the streets alone at midnight. Anything could have happened. Amy, be reasonable, Barbara's voice was cold. We were worried too. In the background, Amy could hear Brooke laughing. Well, that was dramatic. Kids are such a handful. Driving her car, Amy felt her vision blur with tears and anger. Her heart was overwhelmed with anger toward her parents and sister, as well as regret toward herself. Why had she decided to leave Oliver with them? Why hadn't she insisted more strongly? Stopped at a red light on her way to the central station, she suddenly remembered Oliver's anxious eyes before she left the house that evening. Had he sensed something? The light turned green, and Amy pressed the accelerator. When she pulled into the parking lot of her apartment building, the clock showed 3 a.m. The police had informed Amy that Oliver would be brought to her home because he had remembered her address. She turned off the engine, took a deep breath, and got out of the car. As she ran up the stairs to her apartment, she blamed herself. Why had she left Oliver with her parents? Why hadn't she objected more strongly when she heard they were going to a movie? As she approached her apartment door, the intercom rang. Amy pressed the button to answer. Yes. Officer Johnson of the Chicago Police. I've brought your child, a male voice responded. Amy immediately unlocked the door and rushed into the hallway. There stood a uniformed police officer with a small figure beside him. It was Oliver. Oliver! Amy cried, running down the stairs. Oliver's face was wet with tears. His clothes were disheveled, and his hands were dirty. As soon as he saw Amy, he shouted, "Mom," and ran toward her. Amy hugged her son and noticed his small body was cold. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" she asked, checking him over. Oliver shook his head. "I was scared," he whispered in a small voice. The police officer stood with a stern expression. He was in his mid-40s, with eyes that showed both tiredness and professional strictness. "Miss Foster?" the officer asked. "Yes, Amy Foster," she answered while holding Oliver. "A passerby found this child wandering alone outside the movie theater," the officer explained matter-of-factly, though his tone contained disapproval. "He was crying and said he was lost." Amy's face flushed. She wanted to make excuses, but knew better. "I was working a night shift at the hospital. My son was with my parents." The officer took out his notebook. "Could you provide your parents' names and contact information?" "Barbara and Charles Harris," Amy answered with a trembling voice. "They said they took my son to a movie but lost sight of him when they were leaving." The officer's expression hardened further. "Lost sight of him? You mean they left a 6-year-old child unattended in a public place?" Amy was at a loss for words. "I don't know the details either. I just received the call while at work." "I understand," the officer said. "This case will need to be reported to Child Protective Services. Someone will contact you tomorrow." Amy felt a tightening in her chest. Child Protective Services. "But Ms. Foster, you are not being accused," the officer softened his voice slightly. "However, an investigation into the individuals who left your child unattended is necessary. The child's safety is our top priority." Amy nodded silently. Oliver buried his face against her chest, trembling slightly. "I'll prepare a detailed report," the officer continued. "Tomorrow, an officer will visit to take formal statements from you and your son." "Thank you for finding my son," Amy said with heartfelt gratitude. The officer touched his hat lightly. "Your son was brave." Remembering his address helped. He turned to Oliver and his expression softened slightly. "You're a strong boy. Stay safe with your mom." After the police officer left, Amy took Oliver to the apartment and gave him a warm bath. He was still trembling and didn't want to talk. Amy just gently cared for him. After dressing him in clean pajamas, she put Oliver to bed and sat beside him. "Can you tell me what happened?" she asked gently. Oliver finally began to speak, with tears in his eyes. "When the movie ended and everyone was leaving, Grandma was talking with Aunt Brooke." He cleared his throat. "Grandpa was on the phone. No one was watching me." Amy squeezed her son's hand. Oliver continued, "There were so many people, pushing, and suddenly, I couldn't see Grandma and the others anymore." His voice trembled. "I called out, but they didn't seem to hear. When I went outside, I got even more lost." Amy's heart ached. She wanted to hug her son, but knew it was important to let him finish his story. "You must have been scared," she said gently. Oliver nodded. "But I remembered what you taught me. If I get lost, I should ask a store employee or a police officer for help." A hint of pride appeared in his eyes. "So I talked to a lady who was nearby. She called the police for me." A warmth spread through Amy's chest. "That's right, that was the correct decision. You're such a smart boy." "The police officer was nice," Oliver said. "But Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Brooke." He faltered. "What is it?" Amy gently prompted. Did they forget about me? Oliver's clear blue eyes clouded with doubt and sadness. Because I'm not important to them. Amy felt her heart breaking. No, that's not true. She placed her hand on Oliver's cheek. You are very important. Nothing can change that. But the police officer said Grandma was laughing on the phone. Oliver's voice grew smaller. Were they okay with me being gone? Amy was at a loss for words. Her body trembled with anger toward her parents and sister. She felt furious not only because they had left Oliver behind, but also because their subsequent attitude was causing her son additional pain. Oliver, listen, she looked into her son's eyes with a serious expression. Sometimes, even adults make mistakes. Grandma and the others made a big mistake. But it's not your fault. Oliver nodded silently. He looked exhausted. We'll talk more tomorrow, Amy said. Now, get some rest. I'll stay right by your side. Oliver closed his eyes beside Amy. Even after he fell asleep, she continued to hold his hand. Along with anger toward her parents, guilt toward herself was tormenting her. Her cell phone rang. It was from Barbara. Amy ignored the call and silenced her phone. Right now, she wanted to focus only on protecting the small life sleeping in front of her. Morning light shone through the gap in the curtains, illuminating Amy's face. She had barely slept. Next to Oliver, listening to his safe, sleeping breaths, the events of last night had continued to spin in her head. At breakfast, Oliver was quieter than usual. He just stirred his cereal without really eating it. Are you feeling sick? Amy asked gently. Oliver shrugged. I don't want to go to school today. Amy understood. It's okay to stay home today. Let's take it easy. As she was cleaning up, the doorbell rang. The clock showed 9 a.m. When she opened the door, a serious-looking woman stood there. She was wearing a suit and carrying a bag with documents. Are you Amy Foster? I'm Laura Mackenzie from Child Protective Services. Amy nervously invited her in. Please, come in. Laura entered the living room and sat on the sofa. I'd like to hear the details about last night's incident. Her voice was professionally calm, but somehow also warm. Amy explained what had happened last night. How she left her son with her parents because of her night shift, how she worried when she heard they were going to a movie, and how she was informed at midnight that her son was missing. Laura listened carefully and took notes. May I speak with Oliver as well? Amy nodded and called Oliver, who was eating cookies in the kitchen. Oliver, this is Laura. She'd like to talk to you. Oliver looked up shyly at Laura. Laura seemed accustomed to dealing with children and naturally crouched down to his eye level. Hello, Oliver. Can you tell me about last night? It must have been scary. Oliver hesitated at first but gradually began to talk about his experience. How he got lost when leaving the movie theater after his grandparents and aunt lost sight of him, how he tried to find help but couldn't find them, and how a kind woman called the police for him. You're a brave boy, Laura said when he finished his story. You did the right thing. Asking for help is very important. After Oliver returned to the kitchen, Laura turned to Amy. Her expression became stern. Miss Foster, this is a serious matter, she said in a serious voice. Child abandonment is a crime, and leaving a 6-year-old child alone in a public place is clearly negligent. Amy looked shocked. I didn't abandon my son. I left him with my parents. You are not being accused, Laura reassured her. The issue is with your parents' and sister's actions. She's my younger sister, Amy automatically corrected. I apologize, Laura said. In any case, their actions may result in legal consequences. We will proceed with our investigation and contact them. A complex mix of emotions swirled in Amy's heart. She felt angry at her parents and sister, but also worried about them getting into legal trouble. What kind of penalties might they face? She asked. It depends on the circumstances, Laura explained. At minimum, they will receive a formal warning. In the worst case, they could be charged with misdemeanor child abandonment. Amy gasped. We also consider the psychological impact on Oliver, Laura continued. I recommend professional counseling. Such experiences can leave trauma in children. Amy nodded. Of course. I'll provide whatever support he needs. That afternoon, calls from Barbara and Charles kept coming in. Amy didn't answer, preferring to spend valuable time with Oliver. They played board games and watched Oliver's favorite movies. She did everything she could to restore her son's smile. The next day, Amy was informed that Child Protective Services had contacted Barbara, Charles, and Brooke. They had been called in for questioning. A week later, Laura visited Amy's home again. I'm here to inform you of our investigation results, she said. Your mother, father, and sister will be charged with misdemeanor child abandonment. Amy opened her mouth in surprise. They're really being charged? Yes, Laura nodded. Based on the evidence and testimony, their negligence is clear. The movie theater's surveillance camera also captured them hurrying out without checking on Oliver. Amy stared out the window. Complex emotions swirled within her. Furthermore, this case has caught the attention of local media, Laura continued. It may become an article as an issue related to child safety. Over the next few days, events developed rapidly. A local newspaper published an article with the headline, Wealthy Grandparents Leave Grandson at Movie Theater. The volunteer organizations and social clubs Barbara belonged to began reconsidering their relationship with her, and Charles was looked at askance by his friends. Rumors circulated that Brooke's reputation at her real estate company had fallen, and she was beginning to lose clients. On the day of the trial, Amy appeared as a witness. In court, she saw her parents and sister. Barbara had lost her usual dignity and looked tired. Charles slumped his shoulders and appeared aged. Only Brooke maintained a dissatisfied expression, but her confidence seemed shaken too. The verdict was harsh. All three were found guilty and sentenced to pay fines, perform community service, and attend parenting education classes. The judge reprimanded them severely during sentencing. The mental trauma suffered by this 6-year-old child is immeasurable. Your actions in disregarding his safety are inexcusable. Barbara shed tears of genuine regret for the first time. Brooke turned her face away, her shoulders shaking. Charles quietly bowed his head. As they were leaving the courtroom, Barbara tried to approach Amy, but Amy kept her distance. I don't want to talk right now, she said quietly. I need time. In the car on the way home, Amy was overwhelmed by complex emotions. Justice may have been served, but the family rift had deepened. She felt that for Oliver's sake, she might need to repair her relationship with them someday. But that would need to be done carefully, over time. Did I do the right thing? She asked herself. The answer was in her heart. Through this incident, she had found the strength to stand up and protect her son. That was not wrong. 1 year after the incident, Lincoln Park in Chicago was adorned with fresh greenery and flowers. Amy sat on a bench, watching Oliver play on the playground equipment. He was now 7 years old and seemed to be overcoming the fear of that night. Therapy with a child psychologist had helped his recovery. Amy. Turning around, there stood her father, Charles. He looked like he had aged rapidly in the past year. His hair was whiter, and his back was slightly hunched. His eyes held sadness and remorse. Dad, Amy stood up, somewhat surprised. Since the trial, she had maintained only minimal contact with her parents. May I talk with you? Charles asked hesitantly. Amy silently gestured for him to sit beside her. For a while, they sat in silence, watching Oliver play with other children. "He looks well," Charles said quietly. "Yes, he's a strong child," Amy replied. "But he still has nightmares sometimes." Charles sighed deeply. "I'm truly sorry about that night. I should have been more careful. I should have spoken up more strongly." His voice trembled. "How are Mom and Brooke?" Amy asked. "Barbara has changed," Charles said. "Her reputation was damaged by that incident. Many of her friends distanced themselves from her. For the first time, she had to seriously face the consequences of her actions." Amy listened silently. "Brooke is struggling too," Charles continued. "Her real estate contracts have drastically decreased, and she's having financial difficulties. She's also participating in family counseling." "Family counseling?" Amy asked in surprise. "Yes," Charles nodded. "After taking the court-ordered parenting classes, the three of us decided to continue. We felt we needed to confront the seriousness of our actions and the unfair treatment we've shown you over the years." At that moment, Oliver ran over. He stopped when he saw Charles. "Grandpa." Tears welled up in Charles's eyes. "Hi, Oliver." After hesitating, Oliver stepped forward. "Can I see Grandma and the others now?" He looked up at Amy and asked. Amy was surprised. She hadn't expected her son to express a desire to see her parents. "Do you really want to?" Oliver nodded. "Everyone makes mistakes, right?" he said with pure childlike logic. "I make mistakes too." Something hot welled up in Amy's chest. She placed her hand on her son's shoulder and looked at Charles. "Let's take it slowly," she said. "Starting with short visits." "Thank you," Charles's voice was full of gratitude. That evening, Amy called Lisa. "Family is complicated," she sighed. "Blood ties aren't the only family," Lisa said gently. "There's also chosen family, like us." Amy smiled. Over the past year, she had built a new, chosen family with close friends including Lisa. Without their support, she couldn't have overcome this difficult time. A few days later, Amy and Oliver reunited with Barbara, Charles, and Brooke in a limited way. It was a tense, awkward time, but it was a first step. That night, as she tucked Oliver into bed, Amy gently stroked his hair. "You taught me the importance of forgiveness." Oliver looked up at her with sleepy eyes. "But it's also important not to forget, right?" Amy nodded with a smile. There was deep truth in his words. There was the true essence of family, where strictness and gentleness coexist. The spring morning in Boston was, as usual, covered with gray clouds. Jennifer Wilson gazed out the window, remembering how long she had dreaded this day. Her sister Allison's engagement party. She took a deep breath and stood in front of the mirror. Jennifer worked as a child psychologist at a small clinic in downtown Boston. Her gentle voice and warm smile had a remarkable ability to open the hearts of traumatized children. She was well respected by her colleagues, and her appointment schedule was always full. However, once she stepped outside her workplace, Jennifer became a different person, losing her confidence, especially in front of her family. "Is this good enough?" Jennifer murmured quietly as she put on yet another outfit from her closet. The navy blue dress beautifully accentuated her skin tone, but when she looked at her figure, the familiar anxiety washed over her. Since childhood, she had been labeled as fat by her family. Jennifer's parents, Robert and Martha Wilson, ran a real estate company in an affluent area outside Boston. Their company, Wilson Properties, was known as one of the premier luxury property businesses in Massachusetts. And to maintain that image, they were obsessed with projecting the perfect family image to others. "Jenny, just think how lovely you'd be if you lost a little weight." This was something her mother had repeated to Jennifer since her teenage years. Even on the day she graduated from college, her mother's first words were not to celebrate her academic success but to express concern about how she looked in her graduation photos. In contrast, her sister Allison was the perfect daughter in her parents' eyes. She had been the captain of the cheerleading team in high school, a popular sorority member in college, and had just gotten engaged to Jason Bradley, a successful IT entrepreneur. Photos of Allison occupied most of the picture frames that adorned the walls of the Wilson family living room. Should I put on a bit more makeup? Jennifer paused in front of the mirror, studying her face. Her soft brown eyes and gentle smile were features that many of her patients described as comforting. But today, she could see shadows of anxiety in those eyes. The phone rang, and Jennifer turned around, slightly startled. Seeing the name on the screen, she couldn't help but smile. Grandma Eleanor. When she answered the phone, a warm, familiar voice came through. Jenny, how are the preparations going? It's a day of celebration, isn't it? Eleanor was Jennifer's paternal grandmother and her only true ally. Eleanor had always worried about Martha's perfectionism and Robert's cold attitude. I'm managing, I guess, Jennifer answered honestly. I want to put on a good face for Allison's sake, but... You are wonderful just as you are, Jenny, Eleanor's voice was strong. I always tell you that, don't I? Your kindness and compassion, those are what truly matter. After the conversation ended, Jennifer felt a little more encouraged. Eleanor had always been on her side since she was a child. While her parents were praising Allison's grades and activities, Eleanor had always admired Jennifer's drawings, stories, and her kind heart. As she got into her car and headed to her parents' suburban home, Jennifer reflected on her childhood. When she turned 10, her mother had prepared a fruit platter instead of a cake for her birthday. At 15, her father had humiliated her about her dress size in public. And at the high school prom, Allison and her friends had called her Fat Jenny and made fun of her. Yet even among such memories, Grandma Eleanor's kindness had always been a light. The summer vacations spent at Eleanor's house were Jennifer's happiest memories. There, she could just be herself without worrying about her body shape. Jennifer parked her car in front of her parents' luxurious mansion and took a deep breath. Several expensive cars were already lined up in the garden. Allison's friends and her parents' social circle contacts must have gathered. Before opening the front door, she told herself, just for today, may everything go well. When she opened the door, festive music and conversation greeted her. The living room was decorated lavishly and filled with people holding champagne glasses. And in the center of the room stood the perfect couple. Allison, with her shining blonde hair flowing over her shoulders, wore a white dress that accentuated her slim figure. Next to her stood the handsome Jason Bradley, his arm around Allison's waist. When Jennifer entered the room, for a moment, it seemed as if the conversations paused. She felt her heart rate quicken as she tried to maintain the most natural smile possible. Jennifer. You've finally arrived, her mother Martha approached and gave her a light kiss. However, her eyes were already assessing Jennifer's dress, clearly showing her disapproval. Everyone's already here. Go say hello to Allison. It's her special day. Jennifer nodded and made her way through the crowd toward Allison and Jason. When her sister's eyes met hers, there was a momentary cold glance, but it quickly changed to a social smile. Jenny. You came, Allison said in a high-pitched voice. Jason, this is my sister. Jason politely extended his hand. Nice to meet you, Jennifer. I've heard about you from Allison. You're a child psychologist, right? That's wonderful work. Jennifer was a bit surprised by his warm greeting. She couldn't imagine what Allison might have said about her, but at least Jason seemed kind. Thank you. Congratulations on your engagement, she said quietly. Allison laughed lightly. Thanks. But today is our day, Jenny. Why don't you enjoy yourself a little? There are diet drinks at that table over there. At those words, several people in the room let out small laughs. Jennifer felt her face flush, but she maintained her smile. Today was Allison's day. She couldn't ruin it. Throughout the party, Jennifer stood in a corner of the room, quietly observing the conversations around her. Her father was telling his society friends about Allison and Jason's perfect marriage, while her mother was excitedly discussing Allison's wedding dress. No one approached Jennifer to talk. Eventually, her father clinked his glass to get everyone's attention. Today is a special day to celebrate our beautiful daughter Allison and her wonderful fiancé, Jason. His speech continued, praising Allison's success, beauty, and the pride she had brought to the family. Not a word was mentioned about Jennifer. A toast. Her father raised his glass. To Allison and Jason, wishing them the greatest happiness. As everyone joined in the toast, Jennifer quietly raised her glass. In her heart, there was both a wish for her sister's happiness and the pain of always being pushed into the shadows. Across the room, she could see Grandma Eleanor smiling gently at her. That smile alone gave Jennifer warmth in this cold social setting. She quietly drained her glass and thought about the upcoming preparations for Allison's wedding. Would there be anything she could do for her sister's special day? Or would she again be treated as the unpresentable part of the family? Jennifer looked out the window and took a deep breath. Tomorrow was a new day. She had her patients and her important work helping them. Days like today just had to be endured. At least, that had been Jennifer's way of life until now. 3 months after the engagement party, as Boston's summer was coming to an end, Jennifer was checking her mail while drinking her morning coffee in the kitchen of her apartment. Bills, advertisements, and a birthday card from a colleague. But the item she had been waiting for weeks was not there. Allison's wedding invitation. She unconsciously picked up her cell phone and checked the calendar. Allison had said at the engagement party that the wedding would be in November. It was already mid-September. Normally, invitations would be sent out earlier. Maybe I'm overthinking this, Jennifer told herself, but she felt anxiety spreading in her chest. Her relationship with her sister was complicated, but she couldn't imagine being excluded from such an important family event. Almost unconsciously, she dialed her mother's number. "Hello, Mom." Jennifer spoke in the brightest voice she could manage. "I just wanted to check something. I haven't received Allison's wedding invitation yet. Is there some problem with the mail?" On the other end of the phone, she sensed Martha's slight hesitation. "Oh, Jenny. I believe Allison said she wanted to speak with you directly. Hasn't she contacted you?" Jennifer frowned. "No, I haven't heard anything." "I see." Martha's voice was strangely cautious. "Well, I think she'll contact you soon. She's very busy with the wedding preparations. I'll mention it to her." Even after the conversation ended, Jennifer's anxiety didn't dissipate. There seemed to be something hidden in her mother's words. But she didn't have time to think about it further. Today was a fully booked day. That evening, after finishing work at the clinic, Jennifer's phone rang. Allison's name was displayed on the screen. "Jenny, would you like to have tea? Are you free tomorrow?" Allison's voice sounded sweeter than usual. The next day, Jennifer was waiting for her sister at a high-end cafe in Back Bay, Boston. When Allison entered, the eyes of the male customers in the cafe turned toward her. Perfect blonde hair, slender figure, and a confident smile, Allison always attracted attention. "Sorry I'm a little late," Allison said as she took her seat. "I had a long meeting with the wedding planner." "It's fine," Jennifer smiled. "Wedding preparations must be keeping you busy." "Oh, you wouldn't believe it. Allison's eyes sparkled. Dress fittings, venue decorations, menu selection, but it's all wonderful. Mom and Dad have booked a really amazing venue. The conversation continued for a while about the wedding preparations. Jennifer listened quietly, occasionally asking questions and offering to help if needed. Let me know if there's anything I can help with. Like addressing invitations. Allison's expression hardened for a moment. She set down her coffee cup and straightened her posture. Actually, I have something to tell you. Her tone changed. I'll be honest. I don't intend to invite you to the wedding. Jennifer couldn't believe her ears. You heard me, right? Allison said coldly. My wedding will be attended by high society people. Jason's family is upper class, and all his friends are successful. I don't want fat people in my photos. Those words brought a stabbing pain to Jennifer's heart. She caught her breath. Allison. I'm your sister. Your family. That doesn't give you the right to ruin my special day, Allison said cruelly. I don't want to see you every time I look at the photos. And I don't want Jason's family to know I have a sister like you. A sister like me. Jennifer's voice trembled. Don't make me say it, Allison didn't hide her irritation. You know what kind of person you are. My wedding has to be perfect. Try to understand. Tears welled up in Jennifer's eyes. She tried desperately to hide them. I understand, she said quietly. It's your special day. Allison briefly showed what might have been guilt, but it quickly disappeared. I'm glad you understand. That's why I didn't send an invitation. Mom and Dad agree. Those words were the final blow. Even her parents. Jennifer silently stood up, took out some bills from her wallet, and placed them on the table. Be happy, Allison. When she left the cafe, tears streamed down her cheeks. She got into her car and, with her forehead resting on the steering wheel, cried quietly. Emotions she had suppressed for so long poured out all at once. When she got home, she called her parents. Her father answered. Dad, I talked to Allison. Is it true that I'm not invited to the wedding? On the other end of the phone, Robert sighed deeply. Jennifer, try to understand Allison's feelings. This is her important day. You should respect her wishes. But, Dad. I'm family. Of course. But sometimes, even family members need to keep their distance. The phone call ended shortly. Then her mother called, throwing out words like, if you just dieted a bit, this would be resolved. Jennifer lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. The rejection and pain of over 20 years weighed heavily on her heart. Late at night, she called Grandma Eleanor. After telling her everything, Eleanor's voice trembled with anger. Don't mind what they say. You are a wonderful person, Jenny. Your kindness and compassion are worth more than any appearance. But I've been rejected by my family. Real family doesn't hurt you, Eleanor said quietly. You have choices. Jennifer pondered deeply. The years of suffering, the repeated rejections. That was enough. I've decided, she suddenly said in a strong voice. What? Eleanor asked. A surprise, Jennifer answered. One they won't forget. One Friday evening, just under 2 months before the wedding, Jennifer's phone rang. Seeing the name displayed, she frowned. A call from her father was unusual. His voice was stiff and businesslike. I want you to come to a family dinner tomorrow. It starts at 7. The tone was more of a command than an invitation, and Jennifer was momentarily at a loss for words. Since the conversation with Allison, she had barely been in contact with her parents. Allison and Jason will be there. There's something important to discuss. After hanging up, Jennifer was filled with anxiety and confusion. Why was she suddenly being invited to a family gathering? Allison had just told her she didn't want her at the wedding. She called Grandma Eleanor. "Do you know about tomorrow's dinner?" "Yes," Eleanor's voice was tinged with worry. "I was invited too. I thought it seemed odd, especially when I heard they invited you. I wonder what they're planning." "Be careful, Jenny. But I'll be there too." The next evening, Jennifer headed to her parents' house with some apprehension. For today, she had specially fixed her hair and bought a new dress. Whatever was to come, she wanted to look her best. When she opened the front door, the family was already gathered in the dining room. Her father Robert, mother Martha, and Allison with Jason. Grandma Eleanor sat in a chair by the window, quietly smiling at her. "Jennifer, you've finally arrived," Martha said, looking at her watch. "Can't you even be on time?" "I'm sorry, there was traffic." Jennifer quietly took her seat. Across the table, Allison was giving her a cold look. However, Jason stood up and offered his hand to her. "Good evening, Jennifer. It's nice to see you again." His warm attitude was the only comfort in this tense atmosphere. Jennifer smiled back at him. He really did seem like a good person. She could understand why Allison had chosen to marry him. "Let's begin the meal," Robert said. "I've opened a special wine today. Jason's company has secured a new contract in Silicon Valley." "Congratulations, Jason," Jennifer said. "That's wonderful." Jason smiled modestly. "Thank you. Actually, it's a project using technology for children's education. If you're interested, I'd love to hear your professional opinion sometime." "I'd be delighted." A genuine smile appeared on Jennifer's face. Allison was clearly displeased listening to this conversation. She tightly gripped her wine glass and grabbed Jason's arm. "Honey, can't that talk wait? This is a family gathering." Jason looked a bit surprised but nodded. As the meal progressed, the conversation turned to Allison and Jason's wedding. The guest list, flower arrangements, and the special band they had hired. Jennifer listened silently, feeling the pain of her exclusion. At that moment, Jason suddenly stood up. "Excuse me, I need to take a phone call." As soon as he left the room, Allison turned to Jennifer. Her expression was filled with anger. "Why are you here?" she asked in a low voice. "I didn't say you could come." Jennifer's eyes widened in surprise. "Dad invited me." "I objected to it." Allison raised her voice. "This is a family gathering to discuss my wedding preparations. What's the point of you being here? You're not invited." "Allison," her father said in a cautioning tone. "Lower your voice. Jason might come back." "I came because I'm family," Jennifer answered quietly. "Is there a problem with that?" "Problem?" Allison scoffed. "You are the problem. Always." Her mother sighed and turned to Jennifer. "Jenny, maybe you should reconsider what Allison is saying. She has her reasons." At these words, something broke inside Jennifer. Grandma Eleanor tried to reach out and place her hand on her shoulder, but Allison's next words froze the air. "Let me be clear. I don't want people to think a fat woman like you is my family. It's embarrassing, so absolutely do not come to the wedding." The room fell silent for a moment. Tears welled up in Jennifer's eyes, and she desperately tried to hold them back. "Allison." Eleanor raised an angry voice. "How can you talk like that?" However, her father tapped the table lightly and said to Eleanor, "Mom, this is Allison's special day. We should respect her feelings." Her mother nodded. "Do as your sister says, Jenny. You're ruining the family atmosphere." Jennifer looked around. Her parents, her sister. Surrounded by cold, judging looks, she felt completely isolated. Only Grandma Eleanor was watching the situation with eyes full of anger and sadness. "I understand," Jennifer slowly stood up. She struggled to keep her voice from trembling. "If I'm the family's shame, I won't come anymore." On her way to the door, she ran into Jason. He clearly noticed something was wrong and looked at her with concerned eyes. "Are you all right? Did something happen?" Jennifer tried to smile, but she couldn't stop the tears from streaming down her cheeks. "It's nothing, Jason. I just shouldn't have been here." She hurried outside. It had started to rain. She got into her car, and before starting the engine, she gripped the steering wheel with both hands and broke down in tears. For a long time, she sat there, crying as she listened to the sound of the rain. Eventually, she calmed down and took out her cell phone. She called Grandma Eleanor. "Jenny? Are you okay?" Eleanor's worried voice came through. "I left after you. That kind of treatment, it's unforgivable." "I'm okay, Grandma." Jennifer's voice was stronger and more determined than before. "I've had enough. I've been patient all this time, but it's over now." "What do you mean?" "I'm going ahead with my surprise plan. They called me a fat woman and said I was shameful. But it's time to show them who should really be ashamed." On the other end of the phone, Eleanor was silent for a moment, then quietly said, "I'll help you, Jenny. I'm on your side." As she drove away, a new determination was growing in Jennifer's heart. She would never be hurt by her family again. She knew her own worth. On the wedding day, the Grand Cathedral in Boston's suburbs was buzzing with activity from early morning. One luxury car after another arrived at the venue, which was lavishly decorated in white and silver. Celebrities, businesspeople, and even media personnel gathered. The marriage of the Wilson and Bradley families was the most talked about event in the local social circle. In the church's private room, Allison was making her final preparations. Her pure white wedding dress was custom-made, fitting perfectly to her slim body, with a bold open back and a long train that accentuated her elegance. "Perfect, Allison," Martha said, circling her daughter. "You'll be the most beautiful bride today." Allison smiled in front of the mirror. "Thank you for preparing such a wonderful wedding. All my dreams are coming true." "Of course," Robert said proudly. "You're our daughter." The three silently understood that this "our daughter" phrase excluded Jennifer. But no one mentioned it. Meanwhile, Eleanor sat a little distance away, quietly observing the scene. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a glint in her eyes as if hiding a secret. "It's about to start," Martha said, looking at her watch. All the guests seemed to have arrived. Eleanor stood up and smiled slightly. "I'll take my seat too. Allison, you're beautiful." After she left, Allison seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. "Grandma's been strange lately. I was worried she might be planning something with Jennifer, but it seems like nothing's happening." "Don't worry," Martha placed her hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Today is your day. No one will interfere." The ceremony began, and as the cathedral's pipe organ played solemn music, the guests took their seats. Jason was already standing in front of the altar, nervously looking towards the door. His parents sat in the front row, watching their son with proud faces. "The wedding is proceeding smoothly," Martha whispered to her husband. "No problems at all." But at this moment, she still didn't know about the surprise that would happen on this day. As solemn music played, Allison began walking down the aisle, supported by her father's arm. A happy smile adorned her face, and the guests let out sighs of admiration. Allison was the perfect, flawless bride. Allison stood next to Jason, and the priest began the ceremony. Words about love, respect, and the importance of supporting each other echoed solemnly through the church. "If anyone objects to this marriage," Speak now or forever hold your peace. After this traditional question from the priest, a moment of silence fell. Allison had a relieved expression and tightly held Jason's hand. It seemed that surprise she had feared most hadn't happened. But the next moment, the doors at the back of the cathedral opened with a sound. All eyes turned toward the door. Standing there was a woman unlike any they had seen before. Dressed in an elegant green dress, with perfect makeup and hairstyle, she began walking down the central aisle with confident steps. The venue buzzed, and Allison frowned. But as the woman drew closer, Allison's expression froze. It was Jennifer. However, she looked completely different from the Jennifer the family had known. She had lost weight, and with her sophisticated attire and confident demeanor, she looked like a different person. The guests in the venue held their breath at her beauty, all wondering who she was and why she was there. "Excuse me," Jennifer said in a quiet but powerful voice. She walked down the center aisle and stopped in front of the altar. "I object to this marriage." The venue rumbled. Allison's face turned red, and her parents half rose from their seats. But Jennifer didn't flinch. She slowly took out her cell phone. "My sister called me a fat woman and told me, don't come to the wedding because it's embarrassing. My parents supported her. I want you all to hear their words." She pressed a button on her phone. Allison's voice echoed throughout the cathedral. "I don't want people to think a fat woman like you is my family. It's embarrassing, so absolutely do not come to the wedding." Then came the voices of Robert and Martha. "This is Allison's special day. We should respect her feelings. Do as your sister says." When the recording ended, the venue was completely silent. Jason's expression hardened, and he stared at his fiancée. Allison was dumbfounded. Her parents sank into their seats, trying to avoid the gazes of the surrounding guests. "I did lose weight," Jennifer said quietly. "But I did it for myself. What I wanted to show you all is that it's not my body that's ugly, but this family's heart." For a moment, she met Jason's eyes at the altar. His expression showed shock but also something else, a kind of understanding. "That's all I wanted to say. That love is not about appearance, but the beauty of the heart. Be happy." As Jennifer began to walk back down the aisle, Jason suddenly spoke up. "Wait." He let go of Allison's hand and stepped forward. His expression was filled with determination. "I don't want to be connected to such a family." Gasps of surprise rose from the venue. Jason slowly turned to Allison, trying to return the engagement ring to her hand. "What do you mean, Jason?" Allison's voice was trembling. "You believe what she says. Don't you love me?" "I did," Jason said quietly. "But what I just heard, it goes against my values. I believe true beauty lies in the heart. And now, I feel like I've seen your heart." Allison broke down in tears, and her parents rushed to her side. But Jason had already made up his mind. He slowly began walking down the center aisle, and when he passed near Jennifer, he gave her a small nod. It was an expression of gratitude and respect. The venue fell into chaos, with guests voicing their surprise. Only Eleanor was quietly smiling as she approached her granddaughter. "Well done, Jenny," she took her granddaughter's hand. "It takes courage to speak the truth, but you had it." Jennifer and Eleanor, shoulder to shoulder, left the cathedral. 6 months later, Boston was embraced in the beautiful attire of autumn. Jennifer sat by the window of her grandmother Eleanor's house in Cambridge, drinking coffee and admiring the fall foliage outside. Since the wedding incident, her life had changed dramatically. "How was the new child?" Eleanor asked, entering the living room. Jennifer smiled. "She's a very brave girl. It went well for a first session." A month after the wedding, Jennifer had decided to move in with her grandmother and relocated to Cambridge. She had then opened her own clinic. Her reputation as a child psychologist quickly spread, and now her appointments were booked months in advance. "Jason called this evening," Eleanor said. "He wants to see you." Jennifer nodded. She had been keeping in touch with Jason as friends. After breaking off his engagement with Allison, he had moved to San Francisco and started a new project developing applications for children's education. He occasionally sought Jennifer's professional opinion on that project. "Remember what he said when we last met?" Jennifer asked her grandmother. "He said, 'Thank you for showing me the truth.'" Eleanor smiled gently. "He's a good person. He made the right choice that day." In contrast, Allison's life had taken a downward spiral. The events at the wedding spread rapidly through the social circle, and her reputation was ruined. A storm of criticism raged on social media, and she was fired from the advertising company where she worked. The last they heard, she had moved to Los Angeles and was living away from the public eye. It was the same for her parents, Robert and Martha. Wilson Properties' reputation was significantly damaged, and the social standing they had built over years was shaken. They were criticized by relatives, especially Eleanor's brothers, who strongly condemned their actions. Last month, Jennifer received a letter from Allison. It contained words of apology and a request for reconciliation, but she hadn't replied. Similar contact came from her parents, but she had only sent a brief response: "I forgive, but I won't forget." "Come on, we need to finish packing," Eleanor said, standing up. "Tomorrow morning is early." The two had planned a 2-week vacation to Italy starting the next day. They were going to visit Tuscany, Eleanor's homeland, and meet her distant relatives. "I'm really grateful, Grandma," Jennifer suddenly said. "Without you, I might still be in that suffering." Eleanor took her granddaughter's hand. "Finding your own worth was your own strength, Jenny. I just reminded you of it." She put her arm around Jennifer's shoulders, and they gazed at the beautiful autumn scenery visible from the window. "Life is short," Eleanor said quietly. "You should spend it with those who cherish you. We have our future ahead, Jenny." Jennifer smiled. She was no longer bound by the pain of the past. Now, a bright future lay ahead of her. A new life with her true family.